The warp pad beneath Steven's feet hummed with an unfamiliar frequency. Wrong frequency. He'd used gem technology his entire life, knew the feel of dimensional transport like his own heartbeat. This wasn't right. "Wait," he started to say, but reality was already folding. The warp stream twisted, fractured, and spat him out onto concrete that cracked under the impact of his landing. Steven rolled to his feet immediately, pink shield already forming on his arm from pure instinct. He was in a city, looked like any major metropolitan area on Earth, but something felt off. The architecture was slightly different. The cars had designs he didn't recognize, and the sky. The sky was filled with a streak of red and white, moving faster than sound. Steven watched as the figure, a person, flying without any visible technology, executed an aerial maneuver that would have killed any normal human from G-forces alone. They were chasing something, or someone. "Okay," Steven said to himself, lowering his shield slowly. "Okay, different Earth, that's fine. I've dealt with alternate dimensions before. Just need to find a warp pad, contact the gems, and..." An explosion 3 blocks away cut off his thought. Not the clean energy discharge of gem weapons. This was crude, chemical, devastating. A building, an apartment building, Steven's mind, supplied with horror, shuddered from the blast. Its structural integrity was failing. He could see people in the windows, dozens of them. Steven was running before conscious thought finished processing. His gem instincts kicked in. People in danger, move faster, think later. He cleared 3 blocks in seconds, his hybrid physiology letting him move at speeds that blurred to human perception. The building groaned, started to collapse. People screamed. Steven planted his feet and threw his arms wide. The bubble shield expanded outward in a dome of pink light, catching the building mid-collapse. 20 tons of concrete and steel slammed into his barrier. The shield held. It always held when people needed protecting. "Everyone out!" Steven shouted up at the windows. "Use the fire escapes, quickly!" Civilians scrambled, their confusion about the glowing pink dome secondary to their survival instinct. They fled down emergency stairs, some jumping from second-floor windows onto cars below. Steven gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of the building pressing against his shield. His powers weren't purely physical. The shield's strength came from his need to protect, from his emotional connection to those he was saving. And right now, that need was absolute. "What the hell is that?" Steven glanced to his side. A teenager, maybe 17, his age when he'd left Earth, floated down beside him. The kid wore a costume, yellow and blue, the colors vibrant against the smoke and destruction. He had dark hair, wide eyes, and an expression that mixed surprise with something Steven recognized immediately. Hope. This kid had hope in his eyes. "Hi," Steven said, grunting as another section of building shifted. "I'm Steven. Can you help me? I need to make sure everyone's out before I can lower the shield." The teenager, Invincible, though Steven didn't know that name yet, stared at the pink dome for another second, then nodded sharply and flew upward, moving through the building at super speed to evacuate stragglers. 2 minutes later, the last civilian cleared the danger zone. Steven carefully, gradually, let the shield contract. The building collapsed in a controlled fall, debris contained to the street rather than spreading to neighboring structures. Dust billowed outward. Steven coughed, waving it away. "That was incredible." The teenager landed beside him, grinning. "I've never seen anything like that. What kind of tech are you using? Is it some new global defense agency prototype?" "Oh, no tech," Stephen said, raising his hand. His gem, Rose's gem, his mother's gem, glowed pink through his shirt. It's kind of complicated. I'm half alien, well, half gem, which is like an alien, but also not exactly. It's a whole thing. The teenager's expression shifted from excited to analytical in a heartbeat. Alien? You mean like a... He cut himself off, glancing around at the gathering crowd. We should probably talk somewhere less public. I'm Mark Grayson, codename Invincible. Steven Universe, and yeah, somewhere private would be great. I have a lot of questions about where I am and... Stephen paused, his empathic senses prickling. Something was approaching, multiple somethings, fast, and the emotional resonance coming off them was wrong, aggressive, predatory. Mark, we need to move, now. What? Why? 3 figures burst through the smoke. They weren't human. Stephen could tell that immediately from their proportions, their skin texture, their eyes. But they moved like humans, walked like humans, and most importantly, radiated hostility like humans. Well, well, one of them said, his voice carrying an accent Stephen couldn't place. Invincible, and a new friend. The boss will be pleased. We've been looking for you, kid. Time to deliver a message to Daddy. Mark's whole body tensed, his fists clenched, and Stephen felt the shift in his emotions, from hopeful teenager to something harder, more dangerous. Get behind me, Mark said to Stephen. What? No, wait. Let me talk to them first. Whatever the problem is, I'm sure we can... The first alien moved faster than Stephen expected. Not as fast as a gem, but fast enough that most humans wouldn't have seen the punch coming. Stephen did, though. He threw up a shield between Mark and the attacker. The alien's fist hit the barrier and bounced back. Oh, the new kid's got toys, the alien said, shaking out his hand. That's cute. Let's see how those toys handle real force. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a demonstration of violence that made Stephen's stomach turn. Mark flew forward and hit the first alien with a punch that created a sonic boom. The alien's face deformed from the impact, nose breaking, teeth shattering, blood spraying. Mark didn't stop. He grabbed the alien's arm and threw him into a parked car, hard enough to crumple the vehicle like paper. Mark, wait! Stephen shouted. You don't have to... The second alien attacked Mark from behind. Mark spun, caught the strike, and delivered an elbow to the alien's throat that crushed his windpipe audibly. The alien fell, gasping, drowning on air. The third alien, seeing his companions down, started to flee. Mark caught him in 3 seconds flat, grabbed him by the throat, slammed him into the pavement hard enough to create a crater. Tell your boss, Mark said, his voice cold in a way that made Stephen's gem flicker with alarm, that if he wants to threaten my family again, he can come himself. And tell him what happened to you 3 will look gentle compared to what I'll do to him. He dropped the alien, who scrambled away, leaving his 2 companions behind. One was unconscious. The other was still gasping for air, his crushed throat making horrible wet sounds. Stephen moved without thinking, dropped to his knees beside the choking alien, placed his hand on his throat. His gem glowed and healing light suffused the injury. Cartilage reformed, tissue repaired. The alien gasped, coughed, and then looked up at Stephen with confusion mixing with his pain. It's okay, Stephen said gently. You're okay now. Just breathe. You're going to be fine. What are you doing? Mark demanded. Stephen, those guys were trying to kill us. They were trying to hurt you, yeah, Stephen agreed, moving to the unconscious alien to heal his shattered face. But that doesn't mean we let them die or suffer. Everyone deserves a chance to be better. Better? They're working for a crime lord who's been threatening to kill my mom. Mark's voice rose. They don't want to be better. They want to hurt people. Steven stood, facing Mark. The teenager was hovering now, fists still clenched, and Steven could feel the roiling emotions coming off him. Anger, fear, protective rage. But underneath it all, doubt, conflict. This wasn't who Mark wanted to be. Steven could sense that clearly. Mark, Steven said carefully, I don't know what's normal here. I literally just arrived in this dimension 5 minutes ago. But where I'm from, we try to help people. Even people who've hurt us, especially people who've hurt us, because hurt people hurt people. If we can heal them, talk to them, understand why they made the choices they did. This isn't your dimension, Mark interrupted. This isn't a place where talking fixes things. This is Earth, my Earth. And here, if you don't fight back, if you don't hit first and hit hard, people die. Good people, innocent people. My mom almost died because I hesitated. I won't make that mistake again. The words hit Steven like physical blows. This was so much worse than he'd thought. This wasn't just a different Earth. This was a different philosophy, a different entire approach to heroism. Mark, a voice called from above. Both Steven and Mark looked up to see a man descending from the sky. He was older, late 30s, early 40s, with dark hair graying at the temples and a costume that matched Mark's colors but with more white. His posture radiated authority, power, and something else that made Steven's empathic senses recoil instinctively: danger. This man was dangerous in a way Steven had only felt from a handful of beings. Dangerous like the diamonds had been, like a being that could end civilizations and sleep soundly afterward. "Dad," Mark said, relief flooding his voice. "Thank God. I was handling some of Machine Head's goons and I saw the man, Omni-Man, Steven would learn later, said." His eyes tracked from Mark to Steven to the two healed aliens with interest. "And who's your friend?" "Steven Universe," Steven said, extending his hand automatically. "I'm, kind of lost. Dimensional displacement, warp pad malfunction, it's complicated." Omni-Man descended fully, landing with enough force to crack the pavement. He took Steven's hand in a grip that should have crushed bones. Steven's hybrid durability held, and he saw something flicker in Omni-Man's eyes. Recognition, assessment. "Dimensional displacement," Omni-Man repeated, "and powers that include energy shields and healing." "Interesting." He released Steven's hand. "Are you from a warrior culture?" "What? No, I'm from Beach City. We don't really do warriors. More like protectors, defenders, people who try to solve problems with words before fists." "Words," Omni-Man said. The way he said it made the word sound like weakness. "Mark, collect the criminals. The GDA will want to question them. Steven Universe, you'll come with us. We need to determine if you're a threat." "A threat? I literally just saved a building full of people." "You also healed enemies who were actively trying to kill my son. That suggests either dangerous naivety or deliberate sympathy for criminals. Either way, you need evaluation." Steven's gem flickered, not with aggression, with defensive instinct. This man wasn't just dangerous. He was assessing Steven like a predator assessed prey. Every word, every gesture, every response was being cataloged and judged. "Dad, he helped me," Mark objected. "He saved those people. He's not a bad guy." "I didn't say he was bad," Omni-Man said, not taking his eyes off Steven. "I said he needs evaluation. There's a difference. Steven Universe, will you come peacefully?" Or do we need to have a different conversation? Steven's mind raced. He was completely lost in an alternate dimension. He had no way to contact the gems, no resources, no allies except maybe Mark, who seemed conflicted but ultimately loyal to his father. And Omni-Man was radiating enough power that even Steven's considerable abilities might not be enough if this turned into a fight. "I'll come peacefully," Steven said, "but I'm not a threat. I'm just trying to get home." "We'll see," Omni-Man said. "We'll see." As they flew toward what Mark called the Global Defense Agency headquarters, Steven watched the city pass below. It looked like Earth, smelled like Earth, sounded like Earth, but the feeling was all wrong. On his Earth, heroes were celebrated for their compassion. Here, Mark's brutal takedown of those aliens would probably be praised as necessary force. Here, Steven's healing was suspicious. Here, mercy was weakness. What kind of universe had he fallen into? And more importantly, how long until it broke the philosophy he'd spent his entire life building? Steven didn't know. But as Omni-Man led them toward a facility bristling with weapons and surrounded by soldiers, Steven had a terrible feeling he was about to find out. The Global Defense Agency headquarters was built like a bunker disguised as an office building. Steel-reinforced concrete, gun turrets tracking their approach from rooftop positions, energy barriers shimmering faintly around the perimeter. Steven's gem senses picked up dozens of weapon systems, all pointed skyward, all ready to fire at anything classified as a threat. This wasn't a hero headquarters. This was a military installation. They landed in a secured courtyard where armed soldiers immediately surrounded them. Not ceremonially, tactically, weapons raised, angles of fire calculated. Steven raised his hands instinctively, a gesture of peace that felt hollow, surrounded by so much potential violence. "Stand down," Omni-Man ordered. The soldiers complied instantly, but their weapons stayed ready. "Director Stedman will want to meet our guest." "Dad, this is overkill," Mark said, landing beside Steven. "He saved people. He's an unknown with reality-warping abilities who appeared without warning from another dimension," Omni-Man interrupted. "Protocol exists for a reason, Mark. You'd do well to remember that." They were escorted. Steven refused to think of it as led, despite Omni-Man's pleasant tone, through corridors lined with observation windows showing various holding cells. Steven glimpsed figures inside. Some looked human, others definitely weren't. All of them wore restraints that glowed with the same energy signature as the perimeter barriers. "You keep prisoners here?" Steven asked quietly. "We keep threats contained until they can be rehabilitated or neutralized," a new voice answered. Steven turned to see a man in a suit approaching, flanked by two agents. He was middle-aged, balding, with the calculating eyes of someone who'd seen too much and learned to weaponize the knowledge. "Director Cecil Stedman, Global Defense Agency. You must be our dimensional visitor." "Steven Universe," Steven said, not offering his hand this time. Something about Stedman made his empathic senses crawl. The man's emotional signature was compartmentalized, walled off, like he'd trained himself not to feel in certain situations. "I'm not a threat. I just want to find a way home." "Of course you do," Stedman said, his tone suggesting he didn't believe a word. "But you'll understand we need to verify that. Conference room, please. Omni-Man, Mark, join us. Let's have a conversation about what exactly Steven Universe is and what he can do." The conference room had one-way glass on 3 walls. Steven didn't need empathic powers to know they were being watched from behind it. recorded, analyzed. He sat across from Stedman with Omni-Man to the director's right and Mark standing uncomfortably near the door. "So," Stedman began, folding his hands on the table, "dimensional displacement. That's a new one. Walk me through exactly how you got here." Steven explained as honestly as he could. The warp pad malfunction, the feeling of reality folding wrong, arriving in this dimension with no way to get back. He left out details about gem technology that might be weaponized, but gave enough to sound credible. Stedman listened without interruption. When Steven finished, the director pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. It showed footage from traffic cameras, from cell phones, from what looked like satellite observation of Steven's arrival and his immediate response to the building collapse. "Impressive shields," Stedman said. 20 tons of building held indefinitely with no apparent strain. That's significant force projection. What's your upper limit?" "I don't really have one," Steven admitted. "The shields get stronger when I'm protecting people. It's emotional, not physical. The more I need to defend someone, the more powerful they become." "Emotional power scaling," Stedman repeated, making notes. "And the healing? Show me." "What?" "Show me your healing. We have injured personnel constantly. If you can restore damage, that's a valuable asset." The word asset made Steven's skin crawl. "I'm not a tool, I'm a person, and I help people because it's the right thing to do, not because someone orders me to." "Of course," Stedman said smoothly. "Poor phrasing. I meant to say, if you're willing to demonstrate your abilities, it would help us understand how to facilitate your return home. Our science teams need comprehensive data on your physiology and powers." It was a lie. Steven could feel it radiating off Stedman like heat from a furnace. The director wasn't interested in helping Steven get home. He was interested in cataloging a new weapon. "Mr. Stedman," Steven said carefully, "I appreciate that you're trying to protect people, but I'm not going to be studied like some lab experiment. I've had that happen before, and it never ends well. What I will do is help however I can while I'm here. Heal injured people, protect civilians, try to make things better, but I do it on my terms." Stedman's expression didn't change, but Steven felt the shift in his emotional signature. Frustration, calculation. The director was already working through ways to manipulate or coerce cooperation. "Steven," Mark spoke up from near the door, "maybe you should just—" "Mark, be quiet," Omni-Man said. Not harshly, but with absolute authority. "Director Stedman, perhaps we're approaching this wrong. Steven Universe, let me ask you something directly. Where you're from, how do you handle threats? Individuals who cannot be reasoned with, who won't stop hurting people no matter how much you talk to them." Steven met Omni-Man's eyes. "We try to understand why they're hurting people. Usually, beings who hurt others are hurting inside themselves. If we can heal that hurt, show them another way, they often choose to stop on their own. And if they don't, then we contain them. Bubbles, like my shields, but smaller. Protective barriers that keep them from hurting anyone while we figure out how to help them." "Containment," Omni-Man said, "not elimination." "Right, because everyone deserves a chance to be better. Everyone has the capacity for change if you just—" "That's weakness," Omni-Man interrupted. Steven felt the temperature in the room drop emotionally as every eye turned to the Viltrumite. "Steven Universe, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen carefully. You're not on your Earth anymore. This world, this universe, operates on different rules. Rules written in blood and enforced through strength. Your philosophy, this belief that everyone can be redeemed, it's not just naive, it's dangerous. Dad, Mark started. No, Mark, he needs to hear this. Omni-Man leaned forward, his presence suddenly overwhelming in the small room. Stephen, there are beings in this universe who enjoy causing suffering, who choose violence not because they're hurting, but because it gives them pleasure. There are conquerors who see compassion as an exploitable weakness. There are monsters who will smile while you try to understand them, then kill you the moment you lower your guard. Your universe might allow for redemption. Ours demands strength. Stephen's gem flickered pink, not from aggression, from defensive instinct against the emotional pressure Omni-Man was radiating. Just because someone is dangerous doesn't mean they can't change. I've seen it happen. I've helped it happen. The diamonds were... The diamonds? Stedman cut in. Who are the diamonds? Stephen realized his mistake immediately. It's not important. The point is, I've dealt with planetary scale threats before, beings who could shatter worlds. And I resolved those conflicts without killing anyone. It's possible. It just requires believing in people. Or it requires you having enough power that the threats couldn't kill you first, Omni-Man said. Which brings us to the real question. How powerful are you, Stephen Universe? The challenge hung in the air. Stephen could feel Mark's discomfort, Stedman's intense interest, and Omni-Man's predatory assessment, all mixing in the room's emotional atmosphere. I'm powerful enough, Stephen said quietly, but power isn't the point. The point is how you use it. Show me, Omni-Man said. He stood, his movement fluid despite his size. You claim your shields are unbreakable. Prove it. Hit me with your best defense. Let's see if your emotional philosophy can withstand actual force. Nolan, is that really necessary? Stedman asked, though Stephen sensed his excitement underneath the token objection. It's entirely necessary. If Stephen is going to operate in our world, even temporarily, he needs to understand what he's facing. Mark, clear the room. They relocated to an underground testing facility, a massive reinforced chamber that looked like it had hosted explosions before and would again. Monitoring equipment lined the walls. Scientists and soldiers watched from behind thick glass. Stephen stood in the center, feeling like a specimen about to be dissected. Omni-Man hovered across from him, his white cape settling as he stopped moving. Whenever you're ready, the Viltrumite said. Full power, don't hold back. Stephen took a deep breath, created his signature bubble shield, the large hemispherical barrier that had protected him from planetary destruction-level attacks. It glowed brilliant pink, its surface reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. Omni-Man moved. The first punch hit the shield with force that created a shockwave. The barrier held, but Stephen felt the impact through his entire body. His feet slid backward 3 inches on the concrete floor. Good, Omni-Man said, but I wasn't trying. Let's see your actual limits. The second punch was different. Stephen felt the air itself compress before impact. When Omni-Man's fist hit the shield, the sound was like thunder condensed to a single point. The barrier blazed brighter, feeding on Stephen's need to protect himself. It held. Omni-Man smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. There it is, he said. You're strong. Stronger than most beings I've encountered. But Stephen, he pulled his fist back. You're defending. That's all you can do. Defend and defense. The third punch came faster than Stephen could fully track. The impact sent him flying backward, his shield maintaining integrity, but his body traveling the length of the testing chamber to crater into the reinforced wall. Dust and debris exploded outward. "Eventually fails," Omni-Man finished. Steven pulled himself from the wall, shield flickering but holding. His gem was burning pink now, his hybrid physiology processing the impact and converting shock into adrenaline. He wasn't hurt, his durability was too great for that, but the message was clear. Omni-Man wasn't just testing his shields, he was establishing dominance. "I get it," Steven said, breathing hard. "You're strong, really strong, but strength isn't everything. If all you do is hit harder than everyone else, you're just bullying with a cape." "Bullying?" Omni-Man repeated. He landed, walking slowly toward Steven. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Bullying you? Let me explain something about this universe, Steven. There are threats out there that make me look weak. Viltrumites, Ragnars, the Flaxens, beings that conquer worlds before breakfast, and they don't care about your feelings. They don't want redemption. They want dominance. The only language they understand is force." He stopped directly in front of Steven's shield. "So yes, I'm establishing dominance, because if you're going to be here, if you're going to interact with Mark and potentially influence how he approaches threats, I need to know you understand reality. Your philosophy is beautiful, admirable even, but it will get you killed here. It will get others killed, and I won't allow that." Steven's gem pulsed. Pink energy crawled up his arms. "You think compassion is weakness. I think your strength without compassion is just violence in a costume." "Then we disagree," Omni-Man said. "Which is fine. The universe doesn't require consensus. It requires survival, and the survivors are always the strongest. The survivors are the ones who work together." Steven's voice rose, frustration bleeding through. "The ones who build communities, who support each other, who die when stronger forces arrive," Omni-Man said flatly. "Steven, I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to help you understand what kind of universe you've landed in. This isn't your peaceful beach city. This is a reality where hesitation costs lives, where mercy is exploited, where your healing powers will be weaponized by someone, whether you cooperate or not." Behind the observation glass, Stedman was already making plans. Steven could feel it. The director was cataloging every aspect of his abilities, calculating applications, considering scenarios where Steven's powers could be leveraged for GDA objectives. "I won't be weaponized," Steven said firmly, "and I won't change who I am just because this universe is more violent. If anything, that means it needs compassion more, not less." "Idealism," Omni-Man said. "I remember having that once, before I learned what the universe actually is. You'll learn too, Steven. Everyone does. The only question is how many people die during your education." He flew upward, preparing to leave the testing chamber. "Mark, take him somewhere to rest. Show him around. Let him see what we actually deal with here. Maybe exposure to reality will adjust his worldview." Mark nodded reluctantly, gesturing for Steven to follow. As they left the testing chamber, Steven overheard Stedman's voice through an open comm channel. "Get me everything we recorded. Full analysis on his shield mechanics, his healing capabilities, and his emotional response patterns. If we can replicate or manipulate those abilities." Steven stopped listening. His gem was still pink, still pulsing with defensive energy. He'd been in this universe less than 2 hours, and already he was being treated as a resource, a tool, a weapon to be understood and controlled. "Hey," Mark said quietly as they walked through the corridors. "Don't take it personally. Dad's just protective. He's seen a lot of bad things, lost a lot of people. It makes him cautious." He's not cautious, Steven said. He's cynical. There's a difference. Maybe, Mark admitted, but Steven, he's not entirely wrong. This world is dangerous, really dangerous. I've seen heroes die because they hesitated. I've watched villains exploit mercy to strike back harder. Sometimes the compassionate choice gets people killed. Steven stopped walking, turned to face Mark directly. Do you believe that? Actually believe it? Or are you just repeating what your dad told you? Mark was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he finally said. I used to think like you. Thought being a hero meant saving everyone, giving everyone a chance. But after my mom almost died because I tried to talk to a villain instead of fighting him, his voice cracked slightly. I don't know what I believe anymore. Steven felt the conflict radiating off Mark in waves. This teenager was being pulled between two philosophies, his father's brutal pragmatism and his own instinctive compassion, and the universe kept punishing him for choosing the latter. Mark, Steven said gently, people make choices. Sometimes those choices hurt us, but that doesn't mean compassion is wrong. It means some people choose wrong. And maybe if more people chose compassion, fewer people would choose to hurt others in the first place. That sounds nice, Mark said, but dads killed thousands of threats over the years, saved billions of lives by being willing to do what's necessary. How do I argue with results like that? Steven didn't have an answer, not one that would satisfy someone who'd seen what Mark had seen. They continued walking in silence, each lost in thought. Behind them in the testing chamber, Omni-Man reviewed the footage of his strikes against Steven's shield. The boy was powerful, genuinely powerful. Those barriers had withstood impacts that would have destroyed mountains. His healing factor was remarkable. His emotional empathy could be valuable or dangerous depending on application. But more than his powers, it was his philosophy that concerned Nolan. This Steven universe believed everyone could be saved. Everyone deserved redemption. Everyone could change. That kind of thinking was a virus. And if it infected Mark, if it made his son hesitate at a critical moment, it could get Mark killed. Nolan had lost too much already. He wouldn't lose his son to naive idealism, even if it meant destroying Steven Universe's belief system piece by piece until the boy understood reality or fled back to his own dimension, broken but alive. Either outcome was acceptable. Mark took Steven to the roof of a nearby building, somewhere away from the GDA's oppressive atmosphere. The city sprawled below them, lights beginning to flicker on as evening approached, traffic flowing, life continuing despite the violence that had erupted hours earlier. This is where I come when things get overwhelming, Mark said, sitting on the edge with his legs dangling over a 50-story drop. Just to think, process everything. Steven sat beside him, less comfortable with the height, but trusting his hybrid durability. How often do things get overwhelming? Lately, every day. Mark ran a hand through his hair. Dad says it gets easier, that you develop calluses, emotional ones, that help you deal with the constant, he trailed off, the constant death. Death shouldn't become easy to deal with, Steven said quietly. The moment it does, you've lost something important. Maybe, but the alternative is falling apart every time someone dies, and people die a lot in this line of work. Mark gestured at the city. You see all those lights? Every single one represents people going about their lives, completely unaware that there are things out there, aliens, monsters, supervillains, that would kill them all without a second thought. The only reason they can be unaware is because people like Dad and me fight those threats. kill those threats before they reach the innocent people. Stephen absorbed that. On my Earth, we had threats too. The diamonds ruled an empire spanning the galaxy. They shattered billions of gems, my people, who didn't fit their perfect society. They were going to do the same to Earth. Complete annihilation because humanity was flawed. How did you stop them? I showed them another way. I helped them understand that perfection isn't worth achieving if you have to destroy everything different to get there. It took time, it took patience, and yes, it took fighting sometimes. But ultimately, they changed. The diamonds now spend their time trying to heal the damage they caused, repairing shattered gems, rebuilding worlds. They chose to be better. Mark was quiet for a long moment. Then, that sounds impossible. It was supposed to be impossible. Everyone told me it couldn't work, that the diamonds were too powerful, too set in their ways. But I had to try, because the alternative, killing them, shattering them, that would have made me just like them. Someone who destroys what they don't understand. But what if they hadn't changed? Mark pressed. What if they'd kept killing, kept destroying? At what point do you accept that some beings can't be redeemed and need to be stopped permanently? Stephen didn't have an immediate answer. It was a question he'd struggled with during his darkest moments. I think you don't give up on that possibility until you've exhausted every other option. And even then, even if you have to fight, you don't kill. Because killing is permanent. You can't heal that, can't undo it, can't give someone a second chance if they're dead. An explosion downtown. A voice crackled through Mark's communicator. Multiple casualties, Invincible, we need you. Mark was on his feet instantly. That's the Mahler twins. They bust out of prison every 3 months like clockwork. Stephen, you should stay here. This is going to get messy. If there are casualties, I can help, Stephen said, standing. I can heal people, shield them. I'm not useless in a fight. I didn't say you were useless. I said it's going to get messy. The Mahler twins don't do subtle. They're going to have weapons, tech, and no hesitation about killing bystanders if it gives them an advantage. Then we need to get there faster, Stephen said. His gem glowed and a large pink bubble formed around both of them. I can't fly, but I can throw myself pretty far. Hold on. Before Mark could object, Stephen launched the bubble like a catapult. They sailed across the city skyline, Stephen adjusting their trajectory mid-flight with practiced ease. Mark grabbed onto Stephen in surprise, then started laughing despite the situation. Okay, that's actually awesome. How are you steering? Practice. I spent a lot of time getting launched during training. Stephen grinned, then focused on their destination. Smoke was rising from downtown. He could hear screams, even from this distance. They landed, Stephen's bubble absorbing the impact, to find chaos. 2 massive figures in purple armor were tearing through a city block, each wielding energy weapons that carved through concrete like butter. They were identical, right down to the scar patterns on their faces. Finally, one of them shouted, spotting Mark. Invincible! We've been waiting for you! Time to field test our new toys! They always say that, Mark muttered to Stephen. Stay behind me, I'll handle this. But Stephen was already moving, his empathic senses screaming about civilians trapped in the collapsed buildings. He ran toward the nearest structure, throwing up shields to protect people from falling debris. What's the kid doing? One Mahler demanded. Who cares? The other replied. Kill him first, then we deal with Invincible. They both opened fire. Energy beams lanced toward Steven. Not Federation phaser technology, but close enough. Steven's shield absorbed the impacts easily. He tanked attacks from gem warships. These weapons, while deadly to normal humans, were manageable. "You'll have to do better than that," Steven called out, pulling an elderly man from rubble and healing his crushed leg with a touch. The man gasped as bones knitted back together as pain vanished, as hope replaced despair in his eyes. "What the hell?" the Maulers said in unison. Mark used their distraction. He flew at supersonic speed, hitting the first Mauler with enough force to send him flying through 3 buildings. The second Mauler turned to fire at Mark, but Steven bubbled his weapon. The energy discharge was contained in pink light, detonating harmlessly. "Thanks," Mark shouted, pressing his advantage. He grabbed the second Mauler and slammed him into the ground, hard enough to create a crater. Then again, then a third time, each impact more brutal than the last. "Mark, stop!" Steven yelled. "You've got him. He's not fighting back anymore." "He'll fight back the moment I let go," Mark responded, but he did stop, held the Mauler down instead, waiting for GDA containment teams. The first Mauler wasn't done, though. He emerged from the buildings, bleeding but functional, and immediately grabbed a civilian, a young woman who'd been fleeing the chaos. His energy blade pressed against her throat. "Back off, Invincible, or she dies!" Steven felt the terror radiating off the woman, felt the Mauler's determination, felt Mark's frustration and rage mixing into something dangerous. "Let her go," Steven said, walking forward with his hands raised. "Please, whatever you're trying to accomplish, killing her won't help." "Kid, I don't know who you are, but this is above your pay grade. Back off before I—" Steven's empathic abilities flared, not attacking, connecting. He reached out emotionally, touching the edges of the Mauler's consciousness. What he found there was complicated. Anger, yes, desperation, but underneath it, buried deep, fear, loneliness. A lifetime of being treated as nothing more than a criminal copy, identical to his brother, denied individuality by a world that saw them as freaks. "You're scared," Steven said softly. "Scared that if you go back to prison, you'll lose more of yourself. More time. More chances to be something other than a villain. I understand that fear." "You don't understand anything," the Mauler shouted, but his grip on the woman loosened slightly. Steven felt the emotional walls cracking. "I do, though. I'm scared right now, too. Scared I won't get home. Scared I'll fail to help people. Scared I'll become something I'm not because this universe seems to want to make everyone harder, meaner. But being scared doesn't mean we have to hurt people. We can choose something else." "Like what? Surrender? Go back to a cell where I'm just a number? Where nobody cares if I exist or not? Like giving yourself a chance to be seen differently," Steven said. "Let her go. Talk to me instead of fighting. Show people you're more than just the villain they expect." For a moment, a brief, shining moment, Steven thought it would work. He felt the Mauler's resolve wavering, felt the man considering alternatives he'd never allowed himself to imagine. Then Mark spoke. "Don't listen to him. We both know how this ends. You let her go or I make you let her go. Choose." The emotional walls slammed back up. The Mauler's fear converted to rage. "Wrong answer, hero." He moved to cut the woman's throat. Steven was faster. His shield formed around the woman, yanking her away from the blade through pure force. In the same motion, Steven created a second bubble around the Mauler, containing him completely. The villain slammed against the barriers, his weapon useless, his strength insufficient to break through emotional-powered protection. "I'm sorry," Steven said, genuinely meaning it. I really hoped you'd choose differently. Mark flew down, roughly extracting the mauler from Steven's bubble. Nice work. Could have been faster, but nice work. I was trying to give him a chance, Steven protested. A chance to kill that woman, Mark said. Steven, I appreciate what you were trying to do, but these guys, they've broken out of prison 11 times. They've killed 43 people between them. They're not misunderstood. They're not scared kids making bad choices. They're career criminals who enjoy violence. Your empathy is wasted on them. Empathy is never wasted, Steven said, but he felt doubt creeping in. The woman he'd saved was crying, thanking him, holding her throat where a blade had been seconds from ending her life. If Mark hadn't interrupted, would Steven's approach have worked? Or would his compassion have gotten an innocent person killed? GDA teams arrived to collect the maulers. Steven healed 17 injured civilians while Mark handled the cleanup. Every person Steven touched felt their injuries vanish. Broken bones mending, burns healing, even psychological trauma easing as his empathic powers soothed their terror. That's remarkable, one paramedic said, watching Steven work. I've never seen anything like it. You could revolutionize emergency medicine. I just want to help, Steven said, moving to the next patient. He was healing a young boy's concussion when he felt it, a shift in the emotional landscape. Something massive and malevolent had just entered the area, something that made even the mauler's hostility feel like mild annoyance by comparison. Steven looked up to see a figure descending from the sky, not flying, falling with controlled purpose. He was massive, easily 8 feet tall, covered in armor that looked organic, with a mane of white hair and eyes that glowed with predatory intelligence. Battle Beast, Mark said, his voice tight with fear. Steven, run, now, I'm serious, run. What? Why? Who? He's a warrior from off-world, Mark said, positioning himself between Steven and the newcomer. He comes to Earth looking for worthy opponents, to fight, to kill. He doesn't negotiate, doesn't reason. He just fights until someone stops him or dies trying. Battle Beast landed with enough force to crack the pavement. His eyes swept across the scene, the injured civilians, the captured maulers, Steven healing people, Mark in defensive stance. Then he smiled, revealing teeth designed for tearing flesh. Invincible, Battle Beast rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. I sensed combat and came hoping for a challenge, but I see you were merely battling criminals. Disappointing. His gaze shifted to Steven. And you, the healer, I've watched you work. Fascinating abilities, but tell me, can you heal yourself when I tear you apart? Steven felt the absence of doubt in Battle Beast's emotions. This being wasn't posturing, wasn't threatening. He was stating fact. He would tear Steven apart, and the only question was how long Steven would survive. I don't want to fight you, Steven said, standing slowly. There's no reason for us to fight. On the contrary, Battle Beast said, drawing a weapon, a massive mace that hummed with energy. There is every reason. I am a warrior. Combat is my purpose, and you present an interesting puzzle. How does one defeat an opponent who cannot be permanently harmed? I intend to find out. He charged. Mark intercepted, hitting Battle Beast with a flying tackle that would have demolished a building. Battle Beast barely moved. He caught Mark mid-strike, spun, and threw the teenager through a nearby storefront with casual strength. Then he turned his full attention to Steven. Your shields, Battle Beast said, walking forward slowly. They held against Omni-Man's strikes. Impressive. But Omni-Man was testing you. I will not extend such courtesy. When I strike to kill. And we will discover whether your emotional power is sufficient against a warrior who lives only for battle. Steven's gem blazed pink, not just defensive pink, angry pink. This being wanted to hurt him, wanted to kill him, for no reason except personal satisfaction. And Steven was tired of being tested, tired of being assessed as a threat or a tool, tired of a universe that seemed to reward violence above everything else. I said I don't want to fight, Steven said, his voice carrying an edge that made nearby civilians back away instinctively. But if you won't leave these people alone, won't accept that not everyone wants to be your training dummy, then fine, let's fight. And I'll show you what happens when you push someone who's spent their entire life learning how to protect people from beings like you. Battle Beast's smile widened. Good. You have spirit. This will be entertaining. He swung his mace. Steven's shield met it. The impact created a shockwave that shattered windows for 2 blocks. Steven's feet dug trenches in the pavement as he was forced backward, but the shield held, more than held. It blazed brighter, feeding on his anger, his frustration, his desperate need to protect the civilians behind him. Battle Beast struck again and again, each impact stronger than the last, each one testing Steven's limits, and Steven held, his hybrid physiology and gem powers working in concert to maintain the barrier. Yes, Battle Beast roared, yes, you are strong, but strength alone is insufficient. A warrior must know when to defend and when to strike, and you, healer, you only defend. You have power but refuse to weaponize it. That is your weakness. He was right. Steven realized it with growing horror. He was holding Battle Beast off, but he wasn't stopping him, wasn't ending the threat, just delaying it. And delay meant Battle Beast would keep fighting, keep trying, keep putting civilians at risk because Steven refused to do what might actually stop him. Mark recovered, flying back into the fight. Steven, we need to take him down, together. I can't, Steven shouted back. I don't kill people. Then contain him, bubble him, something, Steven tried. Created a bubble around Battle Beast, attempting to trap him like he'd trapped the Mauler. Battle Beast's mace struck the barrier from inside. Once, twice. The third strike cracked it. The fourth shattered it completely. Interesting, Battle Beast said. Your shields are weaker when you attempt to imprison rather than protect. A philosophical weakness. You can defend others with great strength, but you cannot attack or contain without diminishing your power. Fascinating. He was analyzing Steven, learning, adapting, just like the Hashmal had adapted to Enterprise, just like every threat in this universe seemed designed to learn from and counter compassion. Battle Beast pressed his advantage, driving Steven backward with relentless strikes. Mark tried to help, but Battle Beast fought them both with ease, his centuries of combat experience showing in every movement. You're strong, young Viltrumite, Battle Beast said to Mark between strikes. But you hesitate, pull your punches. Fear killing your opponent. And you, healer. He blocked Steven's attempt to shield Mark from a killing blow. You have power that could end this fight. Could destroy me if you chose to unleash it. But you won't. You cling to your morality like armor, never realizing it's actually a chain. Steven felt something inside him cracking, the same feeling he'd had during his darkest times on his Earth, when he'd gone pink, when rage and frustration had overwhelmed his compassion and created something terrible. He forced it down, refused to let this universe change him, refused to become the monster it seemed to want. But as Battle Beast's mace shattered another shield, as Mark took a blow meant for Stephen and crashed into a building bleeding. As civilians screamed and ran, Stephen had to face an ugly truth. His philosophy was keeping Battlebeast alive, but it was also keeping everyone else in danger. In Stephen's universe, that equation resolved through patience and understanding. Here, it only resolved through violence, and Stephen didn't know how to reconcile that. Mark pulled himself from the rubble, blood streaming from a gash across his forehead. His costume was torn, revealing bruises already forming on his ribs. Battlebeast had been holding back before, testing them. Now he was getting serious. "Stephen!" Mark shouted, wiping blood from his eyes. "We need to retreat. Get civilians clear and call for backup." "Retreat?" Battlebeast laughed, the sound like grinding boulders. "The young Viltrumite speaks wisdom, but the healer won't listen. Will you, Stephen Universe? You cannot abandon these people. Your compassion is a leash that keeps you exactly where I want you." He was right. Stephen couldn't leave. Not with dozens of civilians still in the danger zone. Not with Mark injured. Not with Battlebeast clearly prepared to pursue and cause more destruction if they fled. Stephen's gem pulsed pink. Darker pink, the color of his rage form trying to surface. "No," Stephen whispered to himself. "No, I won't. I can do this without losing control. I can—" Battlebeast moved faster than Stephen could track. The mace came down not at Stephen, but at a family huddled behind an overturned car. Parents shielding 2 children, all 4 of them frozen in terror. Stephen's shield manifested instantly, protecting them. But Battlebeast had anticipated that. His second strike, a backhand with his free hand, caught Stephen across the face while his defenses were focused elsewhere. The impact sent Stephen flying. He crashed through a storefront window, tumbled across merchandise displays, and slammed into the back wall hard enough to leave a crater. His hybrid durability kept him conscious, but pain blazed across his jaw and ribs. "You see," Battlebeast called out, stalking toward the storefront, "your power requires focus, intention, emotion. When you divide your attention between multiple targets, you create openings. A true warrior would have let the family die and maintained personal defense, but you cannot do that. Your compassion is your weakness." Stephen struggled to his feet, spitting blood. His gem was blazing now, pink energy crackling across his skin. The rage was building, the same rage that had consumed him when he'd lost control on his Earth, when he'd become something that terrified even himself. "Mark," Stephen said through the communicator Mark had given him earlier, "get those people out of here, all of them. I'll keep Battlebeast busy." "Stephen, you can't face him alone. He'll kill you." "He'll try," Stephen said. The pink energy intensified. "But I'm a lot harder to kill than he thinks. Just get them out, please." Mark hesitated, then nodded. He began evacuating civilians at super speed, grabbing families and flying them to safety blocks away. Battlebeast watched with amusement but didn't interfere. "Smart," the warrior said. "Remove the hostages so the healer can fight without distraction. But it changes nothing. You still won't kill me, and I will kill you, eventually." "Then let's find out," Stephen said. His voice had changed, dropped an octave, gained harmonics that weren't quite human. The pink energy formed not just shields, but offensive constructs, spikes, blades, weapons made from emotion and crystal. Battlebeast's smile widened. "Finally, you show your teeth." They clashed. Stephen wasn't just defending anymore. He created shield platforms to launch himself at Battlebeast, struck with crystalline hammers that shattered pavement, formed barriers that didn't just block but pushed back with concussive force. Every technique he'd learned from the gems, every combat application he'd developed during the war, he used them all. Battle Beast met every attack with equal force. His mace shattered Stephen's constructs. His strength overpowered Stephen's shields. His experience countered Stephen's creativity. They moved across the battlefield in a dance of destruction, each exchange leveling more of the surrounding area. "Yes," Battle Beast roared, "this is what I wanted, true combat. No hesitation, no mercy, just pure—" Stephen's shield spike caught him in the shoulder, pierced his armor, drew blood. Battle Beast stopped, looked at the wound, then at Stephen. His expression shifted from joy to something approaching respect. "You can hurt me," he said. "Truly hurt me. Not many beings in this universe can claim that." He touched the blood, examining it like a curious specimen. "Tell me, healer, does it disturb you, seeing what your power can do when properly weaponized?" It did. Stephen felt sick looking at the wound he'd caused, but he forced the feeling down, buried it beneath the rage that was keeping him fighting. "You wanted a battle," Stephen said, his voice still carrying those inhuman harmonics. "You're getting one." "No," Battle Beast said. "I wanted a warrior, and you're pretending to be one. But I can see it, healer, the way your hands shake, the way you hesitate before each strike, the way you're fighting yourself as much as you're fighting me. You have the power of a killer, but the soul of a savior. That contradiction will destroy you long before I do." He charged again. This time Stephen didn't meet him head-on. He bubbled Battle Beast mid-charge, then contracted the bubble rapidly, trying to crush rather than contain. Battle Beast's mace struck the interior surface and the bubble shattered. But for a moment, just a moment, Stephen had seen fear in the warrior's eyes. "You're learning," Battle Beast said, breathing harder now, adapting, using your powers offensively. "Good, but you're still pulling your punches, still hoping to defeat me without killing me. That hope will be your end." Behind them, Mark had finished evacuating civilians. He flew back into the fight, hitting Battle Beast from behind with enough force to stagger him. "Stephen, we need to coordinate." "I'll keep him off balance, I've got this," Stephen said. The pink energy was overwhelming now, spreading across his entire body. His eyes glowed. His voice resonated with power that made the air vibrate. "Mark, stay back. I don't want to hurt you." "Stephen, you're losing control. I can see it. You need to calm down before—" "Before what?" Stephen's voice boomed, reality itself seeming to shake. "Before I become like everyone else in this universe? Before I accept that violence solves everything? Before I stop believing people can be better? Before you become what you're fighting," Mark shouted. "Stephen, look at yourself. You're terrifying right now. This isn't you." Stephen created a reflective shield, saw his appearance. His skin had taken on a crystalline quality. His eyes blazed with pink fire. His gem was so bright it hurt to look at directly, and his expression, it was fury incarnate, rage given form. He looked like the diamonds at their worst, like the monsters he'd spent his life trying to redeem. The shock of recognition made the pink energy flicker. Battle Beast saw the opening and took it. His mace struck Stephen's midsection with full force, launching him skyward. Stephen tumbled through the air, his concentration broken, his shields failing. He was falling toward the street, toward an impact that would crater pavement and possibly hurt him despite his durability, when someone caught him. Omni-Man. The Viltrumite hovered in midair, holding Stephen with one arm. His expression was unreadable. "I've been watching," Omni-Man said. "Quite a performance. You nearly went fully pink, didn't you?" nearly lost yourself to rage. Let me go, Stephen said, struggling weakly. I need to... You need to stop, Omni-Man interrupted. He looked down at Battle Beast. This fight is over. You've made your point. Battle Beast laughed. Have I, Nolan? I've demonstrated that the healer has warrior potential, but potential means nothing without the will to use it. He froze when he saw what he was becoming, that moment of doubt. That's what will kill him someday. Perhaps, Omni-Man agreed, but not today. Leave, Battle Beast. This is my territory. You don't hunt here without my permission. For a long moment, the two warriors stared at each other. An entire conversation seemed to happen in that silence. Threats, assessments, calculations about whether this fight was worth having. Finally, Battle Beast shouldered his mace. Very well. But I will return, healer, when you've had time to reconcile what you are with what you're capable of becoming. When you're ready to be the warrior your power demands, then we'll have our true battle. He leaped skyward, disappearing into the clouds with inhuman strength. Omni-Man descended, setting Stephen on the ground. The pink energy was fading now, Stephen's rage cooling to exhaustion and shame. Mark landed beside them, his injuries already healing thanks to his Viltrumite physiology. Dad, Stephen was... I saw what Stephen was. Omni-Man cut him off. Stephen, look at me. Stephen met his eyes reluctantly. What you felt just now, that rage, that desire to hurt Battle Beast, that's normal. That's what happens when you're pushed to your limits, when someone threatens what you're trying to protect. You're not a monster for feeling it. I hurt him, Stephen said quietly. I made him bleed. I wanted to make him bleed. That's not who I am. It's exactly who you are, Omni-Man countered. You're a being with tremendous power and strong emotions. Those two things will inevitably result in violence when you're threatened. Accepting that doesn't make you a monster. Denying it does. That's not true. I can be powerful without being violent. I can... Can you? Omni-Man challenged. Stephen, you just proved my point. When Battle Beast forced you to choose between your philosophy and effectiveness, what happened? You compromised your beliefs and went on the offensive. Used your powers to hurt rather than protect. And it worked. You were winning until you looked in that mirror and scared yourself. Stephen wanted to argue. But the evidence was right there in the destruction around them. The crater where his shield spike had slammed into pavement. The shattered buildings from his offensive constructs. The blood on his hands. Metaphorically now, but it had been literal minutes ago. This is what I was trying to explain earlier, Omni-Man continued. This universe will force you to make choices. Your peaceful beach city never demanded. You can cling to your ideals and watch people die. Or you can adapt, use your power properly and save lives. There's no middle ground. He's wrong, a new voice said. They all turned to see a woman approaching. She was young, early 20s, with red hair and a costume that looked more improvised than official. Stephen felt her emotional signature immediately, similar to his own, compassionate, idealistic, but tempered by experience in a way his wasn't yet. Atom Eve, Mark said with obvious relief. When did you get here? About 10 minutes ago, Eve said. Been watching from a distance, didn't want to interfere in Stephen's fight, but I won't let Omni-Man poison him with Viltrumite philosophy. She looked at Stephen directly. You're not wrong for wanting to save everyone, for believing people can be better. I used to think exactly like you. Used to? Stephen asked. Still do, actually. But I've learned that compassion and strength aren't opposites. You can be kind and powerful. You can offer redemption and still defend yourself. The trick is not letting this universe's brutality make you brutal in return. That's naive, Omni-Man said flatly. Eve, you're a child playing at heroism. Stephen is seeing reality. I'm seeing someone trying to recruit Stephen to your worldview, Eve shot back, trying to turn him into another Viltrumite who solves every problem with overwhelming force. But Stephen's not Viltrumite. He's something else, something better. And if he loses that, if he becomes just another powerhouse who kills first and questions later, then this universe loses something it desperately needs. She turned back to Stephen. You froze when you saw yourself going pink because you were scared of becoming a monster. But you know what actual monsters don't do? They don't freeze. They don't question. They don't care. The fact that you stopped, that you were horrified by your own violence, that proves you're not what you're afraid of becoming. Stephen felt something loosen in his chest. But I hurt him. I wanted to hurt him. Of course you did. He was trying to kill you and was using civilians as bait. Wanting to stop a threat doesn't make you evil. Acting on that want without any restraint would, but you didn't. You maintained enough control to recognize when you were going too far. That's not weakness. That's strength. Sentimental nonsense, Omni-Man muttered. Mark, let's go. Stephen needs to rest, and I need to file a report with the GDA about Battle Beast's incursion. Eve, don't fill his head with idealism that will get him killed. He flew off. Mark hesitated, looking between Stephen and Eve. You okay? Mark asked Stephen. I don't know, Stephen admitted, but I will be. Thanks for evacuating everyone. Yeah, of course. That's what heroes do. Mark glanced at Eve. Take care of him. I think Dad wants to have a conversation with me, and it's probably not going to be fun. I've got him, Eve promised. Mark flew after his father, leaving Stephen and Eve alone in the destroyed street. Emergency services were arriving, cleanup crews already assessing the damage. Stephen instinctively moved to help, but Eve caught his arm. You need to rest, she said. Your gem is still glowing. Your hands are shaking. You just went through something traumatic. Helping others can wait 5 minutes while you process. Stephen wanted to argue, but exhaustion hit him like a physical wave. He sat down heavily on a chunk of rubble. I almost lost control, again. In my universe, when I go fully pink, I'm terrifying. I hurt people I care about, scared my friends, nearly killed someone once because I couldn't calm down. And this universe keeps pushing me toward that state, keeps rewarding violence, keeps punishing compassion. This universe is brutal, Eve agreed, sitting beside him. It's unfair, it's harsh, and it will absolutely exploit kindness if you let it. But Stephen, and I need you to hear this, you being here, bringing your philosophy with you, that matters. Because everyone else who tries to be optimistic gets beaten down or killed. Everyone who tries to redeem villains gets burned. This universe has learned to be cynical because optimism seems to fail. It's failing for me too, Stephen said. Battle Beast called my compassion a weakness. Omni-Man thinks my refusal to kill is naive. Even Mark is conflicted about whether mercy is worth the risk. How do I maintain my beliefs when everything contradicts them? By remembering that beliefs aren't about evidence, Eve said. They're about choice. I could look at all the times my compassion has been exploited and decide cruelty is smarter. But I choose not to. I choose to keep believing people can be better, even when they prove me wrong 99 times, because that one time when someone actually changes, that makes everything worth it. Stephen looked at her, really looked, saw the scars hidden under her costume, felt the emotional weight she carried. This woman had been broken by this universe and chose to remain kind anyway. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you keep choosing compassion in a place like this?" "The same way you will," Eve said. "By remembering that the universe doesn't get to define who you are. You do. And if you decide you're someone who saves everyone, who gives second chances, who refuses to become the monster even when it would be easier, then that's who you are, no matter what anyone else says." Stephen's gem stopped glowing. The pink faded to its normal rose quartz color. His hands stopped shaking. "Thank you," he said. "Anytime." Eve stood, offering her hand. "Come on. I know a place where we can grab food and talk without GDE surveillance or Viltrumite philosophy. You need a friend who gets it, and I need to hear about a universe where optimism actually works. Fair trade?" Stephen took her hand, let her pull him up. Fair trade. As they left the destroyed street behind, Stephen felt something he hadn't since arriving in this universe. Hope. Not naive hope that everything would work out easily, but tempered hope that he could maintain his beliefs even here, that he could be strong and compassionate, powerful and kind. Behind them, in the shadows of a ruined building, Cecil Stedman lowered his binoculars. His agents had captured the entire fight on camera, multiple angles, complete documentation of Stephen's powers, his transformation, his limits. "Analysis?" Cecil asked his lead scientist. "Subject demonstrates reality warping abilities tied to emotional state. Defensive capabilities exceeding anything we've measured outside Viltrumite biology. Healing powers with apparent resurrection potential, and an alternate form, Pink Stephen, with exponentially increased power and aggression. Weaknesses? Psychological primarily. Subject has strong moral code that limits power utilization, refuses to kill, hesitates during combat, becomes distressed when forced to hurt others. But sir, when pushed to his breaking point, those limitations vanish. The pink state operates without mercy or restraint." Cecil smiled thinly. "So we have a weapon of mass destruction wrapped in pacifist philosophy. The question is whether we recruit the pacifist or trigger the weapon." "Sir, triggering intentionally seems extremely dangerous." "Everything's dangerous," Cecil interrupted. "The question is whether it's useful. Keep monitoring, document everything, and start developing scenarios where Stephen's compassion becomes exploitable. If we can't recruit him willingly, we'll create situations where he has no choice but to cooperate. And if that pushes him into permanent pink state, then we'll deal with a different problem," Cecil said. "But at least it'll be a problem that points away from us. Now move. I want full analysis on my desk in 3 hours." In a quiet diner across town, Stephen and Eve talked about universes where kindness wasn't weakness, about maintaining hope in hopeless places, about being the person you choose rather than the person circumstances demand. Neither of them knew the storm approaching, the ways Stephen's arrival would complicate plans years in the making, the moment when his philosophy would face its ultimate test. But for now, for these few hours, Stephen wasn't alone. He had found someone who understood, who believed what he believed, and that would have to be enough. 3 days after the Battle Beast incident, Stephen was staying in a modest apartment the GDA had provided, which Eve had correctly identified as bugged 6 ways from Sunday. She'd shown him how to disable the listening devices and cameras, then helped him set up what she called a privacy bubble, using her matter manipulation powers. "They'll know you're blocking surveillance," Eve had said, while creating a dead zone around the apartment. "But at least they won't hear what you're planning." "I'm not planning anything," Stephen had protested. "I just want to help people and find a way home." "That's what I said 3 years ago," Eve had replied. "Now I've got a GDA file thick enough to use as a weapon. Welcome to hero life in this universe." Currently, Stephen was at that apartment with Eve and Mark, eating pizza and watching the news. Every channel was covering the same story. A supervillain called Titan had taken over an entire city block, holding hundreds hostage. The GDA was mobilizing. Heroes were responding, and the anchors were speculating about casualties with the casual tone of people discussing weather. Titan used to be a low-level enforcer for Machine Head, Mark explained through a mouthful of pizza. Then he got exposed to some experimental drug that gave him enhanced strength and durability. Not Viltrumite level, but strong enough to be a serious problem. He's demanding $10 million and safe passage out of the country, or he starts executing hostages. "We need to help," Stephen said immediately, standing. "The Guardians of the Globe are handling it," Eve said. "That's the official superhero team. They've got this. But people are in danger right now. While we sit here eating pizza..." "Stephen, you can't save everyone," Mark said quietly. "That's the first lesson of being a hero in this world. You do what you can, but you accept that other heroes have their territories, their missions. If we interfere with Guardian operations, it causes coordination problems. People can get killed in the crossfire." Stephen felt frustration building. "So we just wait? Hope they succeed? What if they don't? What if people die because we sat here discussing whose territory is whose?" Eve and Mark exchanged glances. Stephen felt the emotional weight between them, a shared history of having this exact argument before, of learning hard lessons about jurisdiction and pride. "Okay," Eve said finally, "we'll go. But Stephen, you follow our lead. The Guardians don't know you. If you show up throwing pink shields around, they might think you're with Titan. Communication and coordination matter in team situations." They flew, Mark carrying Stephen, Eve using her powers to propel herself toward the crisis zone. Stephen could see the destruction from miles away, buildings damaged, streets evacuated, and at the center of it all, Titan. He was massive, 8 feet tall, covered in rocky protrusions that served as natural armor, with strength evident in every movement. He stood atop a collapsed parking structure, surrounded by hostages kneeling with their hands bound behind their backs. Around the structure, the Guardians of the Globe had established a perimeter. Stephen recognized their leader immediately from news coverage. Immortal. An ancient hero who'd lived for thousands of years, fought in countless wars, and had a reputation for brutal efficiency. The others included War Woman, Green Ghost, Red Rush, Aquarius, Martian Man, and Darkwing, a formidable team by any standard. "Immortal, this is Invincible," Mark said through his communicator. "I've got Adam Eve and a new hero, Steven Universe. We're here to assist if needed." "Negative Invincible," Immortal's voice came back, stern and controlled. "This is a Guardian operation. Maintain perimeter distance and stand by in case of spillover." "But we could help evacuate hostages while you..." "I said maintain distance, Invincible. That's an order." Mark's jaw tightened, but he complied. They landed on a rooftop 3 blocks away, close enough to observe, but far enough to respect Guardian jurisdiction. Stephen watched through a pair of binoculars Mark provided. Titan was pacing, his body language radiating desperation and rage. The hostages were terrified. Stephen could feel their fear even from this distance, his empathic abilities picking up their emotional signatures like radar. "Why aren't they doing anything?" Stephen asked. "They've got him surrounded. They could—" "Hostages," Eve said flatly. "Titan knows the Guardians won't risk civilian casualties. He's using them as shields. Classic villain playbook." "Then we bypass the shields," Stephen said. "I could create barriers around each hostage, protect them while the Guardians move in." "From 3 blocks away?" Mark shook his head. "Stephen, I've seen your shields. They're powerful, but you need to see what you're protecting to shield it effectively." And Titan would see the pink barriers forming. He'd start executing hostages before you could protect them all. "So what's the plan? What are the Guardians doing?" "Negotiating," Eve said. "They'll talk Titan down, offer him deals, stall until he makes a mistake or until they find an opening for extraction. It's standard procedure." "How long does that take?" "Hours sometimes days." "Days?" Stephen's voice rose. "Those people are kneeling on concrete in the sun with their hands bound, and you're telling me the Guardians will let them suffer for days because of procedure?" "Stephen, I get it," Mark said. "I really do. But rushing in without a plan gets people killed. We have to trust—" Titan grabbed one of the hostages, a middle-aged man, balding, wearing a business suit, lifted him by the throat. "I'm done waiting," Titan shouted, his voice carrying across the silent streets. "I want my money transferred now, or this guy dies. You've got 60 seconds. Stephen was moving before conscious thought finished processing. He launched himself off the rooftop, formed a shield platform midair to bounce higher, and sailed across 3 blocks in 5 seconds flat. Mark and Eve shouted behind him, but he didn't stop. The Guardian saw him coming. Immortal's eyes widened. "Who the hell? Everyone hold position. Unknown incoming." Stephen landed between Titan and the perimeter. His gem blazed pink, and he threw up a shield separating Titan from the hostages. The barrier slammed into place with enough force to make Titan stumble backward, dropping his captive. Stephen immediately created a second shield around all the hostages, a protective dome that glowed brilliant rose quartz. "Everyone stay calm," Stephen said to the terrified civilians. "You're safe now. I won't let him hurt you." "You idiot kid," Titan roared. "You just killed these people. I've got a dead man switch, remote detonator. The second my heart stops or I lose consciousness, bombs planted throughout this structure explode. You just trapped them with explosives." Stephen's blood ran cold. He felt the truth in Titan's words. No deception, just genuine rage and desperation. There were bombs, real bombs, and his intervention had just made things infinitely worse. "Then deactivate them," Stephen said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Let the hostages go. We can still resolve this peacefully." "Peacefully?" Titan laughed bitterly. "Kid, I'm going to prison for life if I surrender. Life in a cell designed to hold super-powered criminals. You know what that's like? No sunlight, no freedom, no life. I'd rather die. And if I die, these people die with me. So back off, or everyone learns what failure smells like." The Guardians surrounded Stephen's position. Immortal landed directly in front of him, his ancient face carved from fury. "Who authorized your intervention?" Immortal demanded. "Who told you to engage?" "Nobody," Stephen admitted. "But he was going to kill that man. I couldn't just watch." "So you compromised a negotiation, violated Guardian protocol, and potentially triggered a hostage execution scenario. Congratulations. You just made this situation 10 times worse. Immortal turned to War Woman. Status on the dead man's switch? Scanning now, she replied, her enhanced vision examining Titan. Confirmed. Wireless detonator linked to his cardiovascular system. If his heart rate drops below 40 BPM or exceeds 180, the signal transmits. We knock him out or kill him, the bombs go off. Can you disarm remotely? Negative. The bombs are shielded. We'd need physical access to each one, and we don't know their locations. Immortal's expression darkened. He turned back to Stephen. This is on you now. You made this mess. How do you plan to fix it? Stephen's mind raced. His shields could protect the hostages from the blast, probably, but the structure would collapse. People could be crushed even if they survived the explosion, and Titan was clearly past the point of reason, his emotions a chaotic mix of fear, rage, and suicidal desperation. I can talk to him, Stephen said. I can talk, Titan interrupted. What are you going to talk about? My tragic backstory, how I had a rough childhood. Save it, kid. I know what I am. I'm a criminal, a bad guy. I hurt people, and I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is spending the rest of my life in a box because society decided I'm not worth saving. But you are worth saving, Stephen said, lowering his shields cautiously. Everyone is. Whatever brought you to this point, whatever choices you've made, they don't define your entire future. You can choose differently. Choose to let these people go. Choose to face consequences without taking innocent lives with you. Choose to be someone who, at the end, did the right thing. Titan stared at him for a long moment. Stephen felt the emotional struggle inside the villain, the desperate want to believe Stephen's words warring with the cynical certainty that this universe didn't offer second chances. Kid, Titan said quietly, you don't belong here. You're too soft for this world, too hopeful, and that hope is going to get you killed. Then he pressed the detonator. Stephen's shields expanded instantly, wrapping every hostage individually in protective barriers. The bombs detonated, 6 explosions throughout the parking structure, each one powerful enough to vaporize human bodies. The building shuddered, groaned, and began to collapse. But Stephen's shields held, every single hostage protected in pink light, suspended safely while concrete and steel fell around them. The structure came down in a thunderous crash, dust billowing outward, debris flying, and when it cleared, 43 people stood unharmed in Stephen's barriers. Titan was buried under rubble. His dead man's switch had failed, not because of malfunction, but because Stephen's shields had contained the explosion's EM pulses, preventing transmission to backup detonators that would have targeted nearby buildings. The Guardians moved immediately, pulling Titan from the wreckage. He was alive. His enhanced durability had protected him, but he was unconscious, no longer a threat. Stephen released the shields carefully, making sure each hostage was on stable ground before dissolving their protection. They stumbled away from the rubble, crying, thanking him, hugging each other. Lives saved. Crisis resolved. Stephen should have felt triumph, should have felt validated. Instead, he felt Immortal's hand on his shoulder, heavy, unyielding. Come with me, the ancient hero said. Now. They relocated to a Guardian safe house, a nondescript building that served as their operations center. Inside, the entire team was present, along with Cecil Stedman via video link, all of them staring at Stephen with expressions ranging from disappointment to outright hostility. Steven Universe, Cecil began, his voice carrying the weight of institutional authority. Do you understand what you did today? I saved 43 people, Stephen said. Titan was going to kill them. Titan was negotiating, Immortal corrected sharply. A process that has successfully resolved hundreds of hostage situations with 0 casualties. A process you completely undermined by engaging without authorization, without understanding the situation, and without any regard for established protocol. He was hurting people, Stephen protested. He had someone by the throat. I couldn't just— Yes, you could have, War Woman interrupted. You could have trusted that we, heroes who've been doing this for years, had a plan, that we understood the situation, that we were capable of resolving it without your intervention. But you didn't trust us. You saw someone in immediate danger and reacted on instinct, noble, stupid, and almost catastrophic. But I saved them. This time, Red Rush said, his words coming rapid fire as always. This time your shields held. This time the detonators failed. This time everything worked out. But what about next time? What about when you rush in and the villain's smarter, faster, more prepared? What about when your instinct to save everyone immediately gets people killed because you didn't coordinate with the actual heroes handling the situation? Stephen felt his gem flickering pink, not from aggression, from defensive emotion. They were attacking him for saving lives, for doing what heroes were supposed to do. I did what I thought was right, Stephen said. Based on what? Cecil asked. Based on your experience in your peaceful beach city. Based on your universe where problems resolve through talking and understanding. Stephen, you're not in that universe anymore. You're in ours. And in our universe, rushing in without protocol gets people killed. The fact that you got lucky today doesn't change that fundamental truth. It wasn't luck, Stephen said. I know what my powers can do. I knew I could protect those people. You thought you could, Immortal corrected. Thought, not knew. There's a difference. Stephen, I've lived for 3,000 years. I've fought in more battles than you can imagine. And the one constant across every era, every war, every crisis is this. Arrogance gets people killed. You were arrogant today, certain your way was right, certain we were too slow, too procedural, too willing to let people suffer. And that arrogance almost resulted in 43 deaths because you didn't consider that maybe, just maybe, we knew things you didn't. The words hit hard, harder than Battle Beast's strikes, because they came from someone who'd seen civilizations rise and fall, who'd guided humanity through its darkest hours, who'd earned the right to make these criticisms. I'm sorry, Stephen said quietly. I didn't mean to undermine you. I saw someone in danger and reacted. That's what I do. That's who I am. Then you need to change who you are, Cecil said flatly. Or you need to go home, because a hero who can't work within established systems is a liability. And liabilities get people killed. Stephen wanted to argue, wanted to defend his actions, his instincts, his belief that saving lives immediately was always the right choice. But looking at these heroes, people who dedicated their lives to protecting others, who'd seen the consequences of well-intentioned mistakes, he couldn't find the words. What do you want me to do? He asked. Follow protocol, Immortal said. When a Guardian operation is in progress, you maintain distance unless called in. When the GDA gives orders, you comply or you remove yourself from the situation entirely. And most importantly, you accept that you don't always have complete information. Trust that other heroes are competent. Trust that sometimes the slow approach saves more lives than the fast one. I'll try, Stephen said. Don't try, Cecil cut in. Do, or we'll classify you as a rogue asset and treat you accordingly. We don't have time for maybes, Stephen. Too many threats, too few heroes. You either work with us or you're a problem we need to solve. Choose. Stephen felt trapped, exactly the way the diamonds had made him feel when they demanded he choose between his human and gem identities, forced into categories that didn't fit, pressured to become something he wasn't. I'll work with you, Stephen said, but the words felt like giving up something essential. Good, Cecil said. Then consider this your first real assignment, a situation that actually requires your unique abilities rather than just your instinct to rush into danger. Briefing in 1 hour, don't be late. The video link cut. The Guardians dispersed, most of them still showing disapproval in their body language. Only Immortal remained, studying Stephen with ancient eyes. You remind me of someone, Immortal said finally, a young hero I knew in ancient Rome, had your same conviction, same certainty that compassion could solve everything, same instinct to save everyone immediately. What happened to them? They died, led their legion into a trap because they believed the enemy commander when he sued for peace. 3,000 good soldiers slaughtered because one idealistic leader couldn't accept that some beings lie, that some situations don't have happy resolutions, that sometimes mercy is exactly the wrong choice. Immortal moved toward the exit, then paused. You have power, Steven Universe. Real power. Power that could make you one of the greatest heroes this world has ever seen. But power without wisdom is just destruction waiting to happen. Learn wisdom or your power will kill everyone you're trying to save. He left. Stephen sat alone in the briefing room, his gem dim, his heart heavy. Outside the building, Eve and Mark waited. They'd heard everything through Mark's communicator connection to the Guardians network. That was brutal, Mark said. They didn't have to tear into him like that. Yes, they did, Eve said quietly. Because Stephen's dangerous, Mark, not because he's evil or malicious, because he's powerful and absolutely convinced he knows the right choice in every situation. That combination gets people killed. Immortal was trying to prevent that, harshly, but necessarily. You think Stephen was wrong? I think Stephen was Stephen. He saw someone in danger and saved them. That's admirable, but he also didn't consider that maybe the Guardians had a plan. Maybe Titan was bluffing about killing the hostage. Maybe negotiation would have worked without anyone getting hurt. Stephen's instinct removed all those possibilities. We got lucky this time, next time we might not be. They watched as Stephen emerged from the building, his posture defeated. He saw them and managed a weak smile. Heard everything? He asked. Yeah, Mark said. For what it's worth, I would have done the same thing. That's not comforting, Eve said, because you've made the same mistakes. Rushed in without thinking, gotten people hurt because you were sure you knew best. You're both young, you're both powerful, and you're both learning that power doesn't equal wisdom. So what do we do? Stephen asked. We learn, Eve said. We get better. We make mistakes and survive them and don't make the same mistake twice. That's all any hero can do. The three of them stood in silence, processing the day's events. None of them knowing that their conversation was being recorded, that Cecil Stedman was analyzing every word, looking for weaknesses to exploit. That, across town, in a prison facility designed for super-powered criminals, someone was taking note of a new hero who valued life above protocol, someone who saw opportunity in compassion, someone who was about to teach Steven Universe the hardest lesson this universe had to offer, that in a world built on violence, mercy wasn't just weakness, it was ammunition. The briefing room at GDA headquarters was sterile and cold, all metal surfaces and harsh lighting designed to strip away comfort. Steven sat across from Cecil Stedman, flanked by Mark and Eve. On the table between them lay a classified folder marked with security clearances Steven didn't recognize. "This is your assignment," Cecil said, sliding the folder toward Steven. "And before you open it, understand something. This isn't a test. This isn't training. This is a real situation with real stakes, and your performance will determine whether the GDA continues to tolerate your presence." "Tolerate?" Steven's gem flickered defensively. "I'm not asking for permission to help people. That's not something you get to grant or deny." "Actually, it is," Cecil said flatly. "The GDA operates under governmental authority to manage superpowered individuals. We determine who operates legally and who gets classified as a threat. Right now, you're in a gray area. This assignment moves you one direction or the other, so I suggest you pay attention." Steven opened the folder. Inside were photos of a man, mid-30s, unremarkable features except for his eyes. They held an intensity that made Steven uncomfortable, even through still images. D.A. Sinclair, Cecil read from the file, former biology professor at Upstate University, brilliant researcher, published groundbreaking work on cybernetic enhancement and biological augmentation. Then he fell off the radar 6 months ago, stopped teaching, stopped publishing, disappeared completely. "What happened to him?" Mark asked, reading over Steven's shoulder. "He started experimenting," Cecil said, "on humans. Without consent, without ethics approval, without any regard for conventional morality. We've found 3 of his subjects so far. College students who disappeared from campus, who turned up weeks later as something else. Cyborgs, essentially. Their minds partially overwritten, their bodies modified with technology, their humanity stripped away." Cecil pulled up holographic images. Steven felt his stomach turn. The subjects looked human from a distance, but up close. Circuitry visible beneath skin, mechanical limbs replacing organic ones, eyes that glowed with LED light. They moved with jerky, unnatural precision. "These 3 have been contained," Cecil continued, "but we have intelligence suggesting Sinclair has created dozens more. They're hidden throughout the city, programmed to follow his commands, and apparently preparing for something large-scale. We don't know what, but a madman with an army of cybernetically enhanced slaves is a problem we need to solve immediately." "What do you want me to do?" Steven asked, though he already felt dread building. "Find Sinclair, disable his operation, and, this is the important part, bring him in alive. We need to understand his technology, potentially reverse the augmentation process for his victims. That requires Sinclair conscious and cooperative." "Cooperative?" Eve interjected. "Cecil, this guy's clearly insane. What makes you think—" "That's where Steven comes in," Cecil said. "His empathic abilities, his healing powers, his philosophy of redemption. If anyone can reach Sinclair, can convince him to surrender and help undo the damage he's caused, it's someone who believes everyone can be saved." The words felt like manipulation, like Cecil was using Steven's own beliefs as a tool to accomplish GDA objectives. But Steven couldn't deny the logic. If Sinclair could be reasoned with, if he could be shown another path, then dozens of victims might be restored to their original state. "I'll do it," Steven said, But I want support. Mark and Eve come with me. Fine, Cecil agreed immediately. Mark provides muscle. Eve provides technical expertise. Her matter manipulation might be useful for disabling cybernetic systems. And Stephen provides the psychological approach. You deploy in 2 hours. Sinclair's last known location was an abandoned factory in the industrial district. We believe he's using it as his base of operations. What about his cyborg army? Mark asked. Oh, if we run into dozens of enhanced humans, this could get messy fast. Try not to kill them, Cecil said. They're victims, not volunteers. But if it comes down to your lives or theirs, prioritize your survival. These mission parameters are clear. Retrieve Sinclair alive, disable his operation, minimize civilian casualties. How you accomplish that is your decision. 2 hours later, the three of them approached the factory under cover of darkness. It was a massive structure, 3 stories of industrial architecture, windows broken, walls tagged with graffiti. The perfect hiding place for someone who wanted to avoid detection. Stephen's empathic senses immediately picked up signatures inside, dozens of them, but they felt wrong. Emotions that flickered and stuttered like corrupted data, fear mixed with compliance. Confusion overlaid with programming. These weren't normal humans anymore. I'm reading 17 distinct heat signatures inside, Mark reported, his enhanced vision scanning through walls. 12 on the ground floor, 5 on the second level. No sign of Sinclair yet, but there's a heavy door in the basement that I can't see through. Probably lead-lined. That's where he'd be. Can we approach without triggering them? Eve asked. Maybe, Stephen said. I can create a shield bubble around us, make us harder to detect. But once we're inside, we'll have to move carefully. If these people are being controlled, I don't want to hurt them. They're victims. Victims who will absolutely try to kill us, Mark said. Stephen, I need you to understand. If we're attacked, I'm defending us. I won't let your compassion get Eve killed. Or you. Or me. I'm not asking you to die for them, Stephen said. I'm asking you to disable, not kill. There's a difference. They entered through a side door, Stephen's shield bubble muffling their footsteps. The interior was a maze of old machinery, conveyor belts, and industrial equipment, perfect for ambushes. Stephen felt his gem pulsing nervously, defensive instinct responding to the wrongness permeating this place. The first cyborg stepped into view from behind a support column. He looked young, maybe 19, probably a college student before Sinclair got to him. His left arm was completely mechanical now, ending in what looked like a welding torch. His right eye glowed blue, tracking them with mechanical precision. "Intruders detected," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Initiating defense protocol." "Wait!" Stephen stepped forward, hands raised peacefully. "We're not here to hurt you. We know what was done to you. We want to help, to reverse it. But we need you to trust us." The cyborg tilted his head, processing. For a moment, Stephen thought he saw something human in that glowing eye. Recognition, hope. Then 12 more cyborgs emerged from the shadows, surrounding them. "Defense protocol engaged," they said in unison. "Eliminate threats to the doctor's work." They attacked. Mark moved first, flying upward to avoid a net of electrical current, one cyborg shot from modified hands. Eve created matter shields, deflecting projectiles while scanning for weaknesses in their augmentations. And Stephen threw up barriers between the cyborgs and his friends, while desperately trying to reach the minds underneath the programming. Please, Stephen shouted, his empathic abilities pushing outward, trying to touch whatever humanity remained. I know you're still in there. I know you can hear me. Fight the programming. Choose to stop. One cyborg hesitated, just for a second. His movements stuttered, his weapon lowering slightly. Stephen felt the emotional struggle inside him, the real person trying to surface against the technological control. That's it, Stephen encouraged. You're stronger than what he did to you. You can... A blast of energy struck Stephen's shield from behind. He spun to see a cyborg on the second level, her entire torso replaced with some kind of energy cannon. She was charging for another shot, her face showing no emotion except cold calculation. Mark flew at her, but 3 more cyborgs tackled him mid-flight. They brought him down hard, their combined strength sufficient to pin even a Viltrumite in training. One of them produced a high-frequency blade that actually cut through Mark's costume, drawing blood. "Mark!" Eve shouted, but she was busy too. 2 cyborgs had grabbed her arms, their mechanical strength overwhelming her. She used her powers to transmute their limbs to sand, freeing herself, but more were coming. Stephen made a choice. He expanded his shields outward in a pulse, pushing all the cyborgs back 10 feet. Then he ran for the basement door Mark had identified, hoping to reach Sinclair before this situation deteriorated further. The door was indeed lead-lined and magnetically sealed. Stephen's shield pressed against it, testing, finding weaknesses. The metal groaned, buckled, then burst inward. Beyond was a laboratory straight from a horror movie. Operating tables with restraints, cybernetic components laid out like a mechanic's tools, computers showing detailed scans of human anatomy, and in the center of it all, a man in a blood-stained lab coat, calmly working on his latest subject, a teenage girl, unconscious, her chest already open to receive mechanical components. "Dr. Sinclair," Stephen said, fighting to keep his voice calm despite the horror. "Stop, please. Whatever you're doing, whatever you think you're accomplishing, it's wrong. These are people. They deserve to choose what happens to their bodies." Sinclair looked up. His eyes held that same intensity from his photos, but up close Stephen could see something else. Conviction. Absolute, unshakable belief that he was doing something important. "Wrong," Sinclair said conversationally. "Young man, I'm advancing human evolution by decades. These people you're defending are going to become obsolete anyway. Biological humans can't compete with what's coming. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, beings that will view us as we view insects. I'm giving humanity a chance to evolve, to merge with technology and remain relevant." "You're not giving them a chance," Stephen said, stepping closer. "You're forcing them, taking away their choice. That's not evolution, that's violation." "Choice," Sinclair scoffed. "People make terrible choices. They choose comfort over progress, ignorance over knowledge. They would choose to remain weak, vulnerable, mortal. I'm saving them from their own short-sightedness." Stephen felt the genuine belief radiating from Sinclair. This man wasn't lying to himself. He truly believed he was helping. That his victims would thank him eventually, that stripping away their humanity was a gift. "Dr. Sinclair," Stephen said, his gem glowing brighter as he channeled empathic power, "I can feel what you feel. Your conviction is real, but it's built on a false premise. Humanity isn't weak because we're biological. We're strong because we have compassion, empathy, connection. The things you're removing from these people are what make them worth saving in the first place." "Sentimental nonsense," Sinclair said. He pressed a button on his console, and Stephen heard mechanical footsteps descending the stairs. More cyborgs. Probably all of them. I don't need you to understand, boy. I need you to leave, or become my next subject. Your alien biology would be fascinating to study. Upstairs, Mark and Eve were being overwhelmed. Stephen could feel their distress through his empathic connection. He had seconds to make a decision. Keep trying to reason with Sinclair, or accept that some people truly couldn't be reached with words. Last chance, Stephen said. Surrender. Help us reverse what you've done. Show me you're actually trying to help people, not just justifying violation as progress. Sinclair smiled. I don't surrender. I evolve. He pressed another button. The girl on the table, still unconscious, still being operated on, jerked as electricity coursed through her partially augmented body. Her eyes opened, glowing blue, utterly devoid of humanity. Eliminate the threat, Sinclair commanded. The girl rose from the table. Her chest was still open, machinery visible where organs should be, blood dripping from incomplete surgery. But she moved, jerky, wrong, horrifying. Her hands had been replaced with surgical implements, scalpels, bone saws, weapons made from medical tools. Stephen felt his gorge rise. This was beyond what he'd faced before, beyond the Diamond's cruelty, beyond anything his universe had prepared him for. This was a man who looked at suffering and called it progress. I'm sorry, Stephen said to the girl, though she couldn't hear him anymore. I'm so sorry. His gem blazed pink, not quite his rage form, but close. Power flooded through him as righteous anger mixed with desperate protective instinct. He created a bubble around the girl, containing her, then another around Sinclair. You're going to fix this, Stephen said, his voice carrying harmonics of barely restrained fury. Every single person you've hurt, every victim you've created. You're going to restore them, or I'm going to keep you bubbled until you die of old age. Choose. Sinclair's expression didn't change. I can't restore them. The process is irreversible. Once the neural pathways are overwritten, the original personality is gone. They're new beings now, better beings. You can kill me, imprison me, do whatever your moral indignation demands, but you can't undo what I've accomplished. The words hit Stephen like physical blows. Irreversible. He'd come here believing he could save these people, that his healing powers could restore them, that compassion could solve this problem like it had solved every other. But he couldn't heal what was gone, couldn't restore minds that had been deleted. These victims weren't suffering from injury or corruption. They'd been fundamentally rewritten at a level even his powers couldn't touch. Upstairs, Mark screamed. Stephen felt it through their connection. Pain, real pain, as a cyborg's blade found his kidney. Eve was shouting orders, trying to coordinate defense while her own injuries mounted. Stephen was facing an impossible choice. Keep trying to save everyone, or accept that some people were beyond saving and needed to be stopped by any means necessary. His gem pulsed. Pink energy crawled across his skin. The rage form was coming, triggered by frustration, by horror, by the absolute wrongness of this situation. And part of Stephen, a growing part, wanted to let it come, wanted to stop holding back, wanted to break Sinclair into pieces so small he could never hurt anyone again. What's it going to be? Sinclair asked, watching Stephen's internal struggle with clinical interest. Are you going to maintain your precious morality while your friends die upstairs? Or are you going to do what this universe demands and become the monster you're desperately trying not to be? Stephen's hands shook. His vision tinged pink at the edges. The choice crystallized in front of him with terrible clarity. Stay true to himself and risk losing Mark and Eve, or become what this universe wanted and guarantee everyone's survival, except his own identity. Choose, boy, Sinclair said. Your compassion or their lives. You can't have both. And in that moment, Steven Universe understood what Omni-Man had been trying to tell him from the beginning. Steven's gem blazed brighter. The pink energy spread across his entire body like living fire. His eyes glowed with power that made the laboratory's fluorescent lights seem dim by comparison. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that vibrated through dimensions his human half could barely perceive. You don't get to do this, Steven said. Each word resonated with barely controlled power. You don't get to hurt people and call it progress. You don't get to take away their humanity and pretend you're saving them. And you don't get to use their suffering as a lesson for me. Sinclair's expression finally changed, shifting from smug satisfaction to recognition of genuine danger. What are you? I'm someone who's tired of being tested, Steven said. The bubble around Sinclair compressed, forcing the scientist to his knees. Tired of this universe treating compassion like weakness. Tired of people like you who see beings as experiments and call it evolution. Upstairs, a cyborg's blade found Mark's stomach. The young Viltrumite gasped, his flight faltering. Eve screamed his name, tried to reach him, but 3 more cyborgs grabbed her. Their mechanical strength was overwhelming. Her matter manipulation powers flickered and failed as fatigue and injury took their toll. Steven felt every moment of their suffering through his empathic connection, felt Mark's pain, Eve's terror, the fading humanity in the cyborgs attacking them, the victims suffering even as they hurt others. The pink energy intensified. Steven's body began to shift, skin taking on crystalline texture, his proportions changing slightly, power building toward the threshold where he'd lose himself completely to rage. And then he heard it, a voice cutting through the fury, not external, internal, memory made manifest in his moment of crisis. The fact that you stopped, that you were horrified by your own violence, that proves you're not what you're afraid of becoming. Eve's words from 3 days ago, spoken after Battle Beast, spoken to keep him from losing himself. Steven closed his eyes, took a breath that tasted like ozone and crystalline energy, then deliberately, consciously pulled the pink energy back, not suppressing it, channeling it, controlling it rather than letting it control him. When he opened his eyes, they still glowed pink. His gem still blazed with power, but his voice returned to human register, and his form stabilized at the edge of transformation rather than crossing completely over. I'm not going to kill you, Steven said to Sinclair. I'm not going to torture you. I'm not going to become what this universe keeps trying to make me, but I am going to stop you. He expanded his awareness upward, his empathic abilities stretching to encompass the entire factory, touched every mind present, Mark's pain-filled determination, Eve's desperate fear, and most importantly, the fragmented consciousness inside each cyborg. The programming was there, Sinclair's commands overriding their original personalities, but underneath, buried deep beneath the technological control, Steven felt sparks, fragments of who they'd been, the girl on the table who'd loved art history, the boy with the welding torch arm who'd been studying engineering, the woman with the energy cannon who'd wanted to be a teacher, not gone, buried, suppressed, but present. They're still in there, Steven said, understanding flooding through him. You didn't delete them, Sinclair. You just pushed them down, overwrote them with programming. But the original people, they're still fighting, still trying to surface. You failed. Your process isn't evolution. It's just torture with wires. That's impossible, Sinclair said, but Stephen heard the uncertainty in his voice. I mapped the neural pathways, confirmed personality deletion. They should be gone, but they're not, because you don't understand what makes people people. It's not just neural pathways and brain chemistry. It's will, identity. The things that make us choose to be who we are even when everything tries to make us something else. Stephen's gem pulsed, and waves of empathic energy radiated outward, not attacking, not forcing, just connecting, reaching past the programming to touch those buried fragments of humanity. You're still you, he broadcast, not words, but feeling, certainty, recognition. You're still human, still yourself. The machines are just noise. You're louder. Come back. Choose to come back. Upstairs, the cyborg holding Mark's blade hesitated. His mechanical eye flickered, blue, then briefly brown, then blue again. His grip loosened slightly. What am I doing? He said, his voice cracking between flat programming and human confusion. Why am I hurting him? Fight it, Stephen called out, his empathic projection intensifying. You're stronger than what he did to you. Come back. Another cyborg stopped mid-strike against Eve. Then another, the girl on the operating table, chest still open, machinery still visible, turned her glowing eyes toward Sinclair and spoke with a voice that mixed human and mechanical. You hurt me. Why did you hurt me? No. Sinclair lunged for his console, trying to reinforce the programming, but Stephen's bubble held him trapped. They're malfunctioning. The empathic interference is corrupting their command protocols. They're not malfunctioning, Stephen said. They're remembering. And you're terrified because your entire philosophy just got proven wrong. People aren't just biological machines to be upgraded. They're not code to be rewritten. They're beings with will that exists beyond your ability to control. Throughout the factory, cyborgs stopped fighting. Some collapsed, overwhelmed by the return of suppressed memories and emotions. Others stood frozen, caught between programming and personality. A few, the ones who'd been augmented most recently, fully regained themselves, their human consciousness reasserting control over mechanical additions. Mark pulled himself free, clutching his injuries. Eve scrambled over to him, using her matter manipulation to seal his wounds. They stared at the cyborgs surrounding them, no longer attacking, just standing there with expressions mixing confusion, horror, and desperate hope. Stephen, Mark called down to the basement. What did you do? Reminded them who they are, Stephen replied. He turned back to Sinclair. You're going to help them, all of them. You're going to figure out how to remove the cybernetics safely, how to restore as much of their original biology as possible. You're going to dedicate your brilliant mind to fixing what you broke. And if I refuse? Then I keep you bubbled and hand you to the GDA. Let them decide what to do with a mad scientist who experimented on unwilling subjects. But Sinclair, I think you actually believed you were helping. I think some part of you genuinely wanted to save humanity from obsolescence. So I'm giving you a chance to actually do that. To save these specific humans from what you did to them. To prove your genius is worth something beyond horror. Sinclair stared at Stephen for a long moment. His mind was working. Stephen could feel it, processing this unexpected outcome, calculating options. realizing he actually had a choice here that wasn't death or indefinite imprisonment. "You really think they can be restored?" Sinclair asked, not mockingly, genuinely. "I know they can," Stephen said, "because I've seen beings recover from worse. I've watched people rebuild themselves after shattering. I've helped species redefine their entire existence. The question isn't whether it's possible. It's whether you're willing to help or whether your ego won't let you admit you were wrong." Sinclair was quiet for 30 seconds. Then, "I'll help, but I want assurances. Protection from prosecution, resources, access to proper facilities rather than a GDA prison lab." "I'll talk to Cecil," Stephen said. He released the bubble around Sinclair slowly, ready to re-establish it if the scientist tried anything. "But you don't get to negotiate terms beyond basic safety. You hurt these people. You violated them. The only reason you're not in a cell right now is because you're useful for fixing what you broke." Sinclair nodded slowly. Acceptable. Stephen turned to the girl on the operating table, still partially augmented, still bleeding from incomplete surgery. "I'm going to heal you now. It won't remove the cybernetics. I can't do that without understanding how they interface with your biology. But I can close the wounds. Stop the pain, okay?" The girl nodded, tears streaming from one human eye and coolant fluid leaking from one mechanical eye. "Please, it hurts so much." Stephen placed his hands gently on her shoulders, carefully avoiding the exposed machinery. His gem glowed, soft rose quartz now. Not aggressive pink, and healing light suffused her injuries. Flesh knitted back together around the cybernetics. Blood flow normalized. Pain receptors that had been screaming fell silent. The girl gasped, then sobbed. "Thank you. Thank you. I thought I'd never feel anything but pain again. I thought I was gone. I thought—" "You're not gone," Stephen said softly. "You're here. You're you. And we're going to help you get back to as close to normal as possible. I promise." He spent the next 20 minutes healing all 17 cyborgs. Couldn't remove their augmentations. That required surgical precision he didn't possess. But he could ease their suffering, could restore baseline health, could give them hope that restoration was possible. By the time he emerged from the basement, exhausted and emotionally drained, Mark and Eve were coordinating with GDA teams that had arrived on scene. Cecil Stedman's face appeared on a portable holographic projector, his expression unreadable. "Report," Cecil ordered. "Sinclair's in custody," Stephen said. "He's agreed to help restore his victims. The cyborgs are no longer hostile. Their human personalities have reasserted control. Some will need extensive medical intervention, but they're all savable. Mission accomplished without casualties." Cecil was silent for a moment. Then, "You were supposed to bring Sinclair in for interrogation and study, not negotiate rehabilitation terms with him." "I brought him in," Stephen said, "alive, cooperative, and with a plan to undo the damage he caused. That's better than what you asked for." "That's insubordination," Cecil corrected. "You don't have authority to offer deals to criminals. You don't determine prosecution terms. You're an asset universe, not a negotiator." Stephen felt his gem pulse warningly. "I'm not an asset. I'm a person trying to help other people. If that doesn't fit your protocols, that's your problem, not mine. It becomes your problem when we classify you as non-cooperative," Cecil said. His tone carried threat despite the neutral words. "But the outcome here is acceptable. The victims can be restored. Sinclair's knowledge secured, and you demonstrated the exact capabilities we hoped you possessed. Consider this mission a success." "Barely." The hologram cut out. Mark moved beside Stephen, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. "You did good," Mark said. "Really good. You saved those people twice, once from Sinclair, and once from becoming what the GDA would have made them. Test subjects, specimens, assets." "I almost lost control," Stephen admitted. "When Sinclair was taunting me, when you got hurt, I felt the pink state coming and I wanted to let it, wanted to break him apart and call it justice." "But you didn't," Eve said, joining them. Her injuries were healing, but still visible. "That's what matters. You felt the rage, acknowledged it, and chose not to let it control you. That's not weakness, Stephen. That's the strongest thing anyone can do." Stephen wanted to believe them, but he'd felt how close he'd come to crossing the line, how easily this universe's violence could have turned him into something monstrous, how thin the barrier was between righteous anger and destructive fury. "I need to tell you both something," Stephen said, "about my pink state, about what happens when I fully transform." They sat on a relatively intact section of factory floor while GDA teams processed the scene around them, and Stephen told them everything about his breakdown on his Earth, about hurting his friends, about nearly killing Jasper, about the terrifying power that came with losing emotional control. "I've been fighting it since I got here," Stephen explained. "This universe keeps triggering it, keeps pushing me toward rage. Battle Beast, Sinclair, even Omni-Man in a way. And every time I feel it coming, I'm terrified I won't be able to stop it." "Then don't," Eve said. Stephen stared at her. "What?" "Don't try to stop it," Eve clarified. "Accept it. The pink state isn't some separate entity. It's you, your anger, your protective instinct taken to extreme. You can't fight yourself forever, Stephen. You have to integrate, make peace with the fact that you have rage inside you, and learn to express it without losing yourself." "That's what I was trying to do in the basement," Stephen said. "Channel the power without full transformation. Use the anger without letting it consume me." "And it worked," Mark pointed out. "You were scary, powerful, but you stayed you. Stayed in control. That's progress." "Or luck," Stephen said. "What happens next time when the situation is worse, when there's no clever empathic solution, when the only choice is violence or death?" "Then you choose violence," Omni-Man's voice said from behind them. They all spun to find Nolan landing nearby, his white cape settling as he touched down. His expression was neutral, but Stephen felt assessment in his emotional signature. "I reviewed the mission footage," Omni-Man said. "Impressive work. You achieved objective, minimized casualties, and demonstrated exactly the kind of power control I was testing you for in our sparring session." "Testing me?" Stephen's gem flickered. "You were trying to trigger my rage state, to see what I'd do." "I was trying to show you that rage isn't your enemy," Omni-Man corrected. "Stephen, you keep treating your anger like a disease to be cured. But anger is a tool, a survival mechanism, a source of strength when properly controlled. What you did today, channeling that power without losing yourself, that's what I wanted you to learn." "By forcing me to the breaking point?" "By showing you where the breaking point is," Omni-Man said. "Now you know your limits. Know what triggers full transformation versus partial enhancement. That knowledge will keep you alive, will keep others alive when you need to tap that power without going completely pink." Stephen wanted to reject Omni-Man's framing, wanted to maintain that rage was still something to be avoided, suppressed, denied. But the evidence was right there in the mission results. He'd saved 17 people by using controlled anger, had accomplished in minutes what compassion alone couldn't achieve. "I hate that you're right," Stephen said quietly. "I'm usually right," Omni-Man said, not arrogantly, just stating fact. "But Stephen, understand something. Accepting your anger doesn't mean becoming like me. I use force because it's efficient. You'll use force because you care too much to let people suffer. There's a difference. And that difference is why Eve's right. You can be powerful and kind. You just have to stop treating those things as opposites." He flew off, leaving Stephen with more questions than answers. Over the following weeks, Sinclair kept his word, working under GDA supervision with Stephen, providing healing support. They began the process of removing cybernetic augmentation from his victims. It was slow, painstaking work. Some augmentations could be safely removed. Others had integrated too deeply and would remain permanent. But every patient regained their full humanity, their personalities fully restored, their agency returned. The girl from the operating table, her name was Sarah, was among the first to complete treatment. She found Stephen after her final surgery, her chest now containing mostly original biology with only minimal mechanical support for damaged organs. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "not just for healing me, for seeing me, for refusing to accept that I was gone, for fighting Sinclair's philosophy that we're just machines to be upgraded. You gave me back my life." "You gave yourself back," Stephen said. "I just reminded you that you were still there, all the strength, all the will to survive. That was you." She hugged him, and Stephen felt for the first time since arriving in this universe that maybe his philosophy could survive here, could adapt without breaking, could remain compassionate while acknowledging the necessity of force. But as Cecil Stedman watched through security cameras, making notes about Stephen's capabilities and potential vulnerabilities, another plan was forming. A test, a true test, a situation where compassion and force would directly oppose each other. Where Stephen would have to choose not between violence and pacifism, but between saving some people and condemning others, where his philosophy would finally, truly, catastrophically fail, and where that failure would either break him or forge him into the weapon the GDA needed. Cecil smiled thinly. Sometimes the best way to control an asset was to let them think they'd maintained their principles, right up until those principles became the chains that bound them to your service. 6 weeks after the Sinclair incident, Stephen had fallen into something resembling a routine. Training sessions with Eve to refine his empathic abilities, patrol shifts with Mark to respond to emergencies, healing sessions at GDA medical facilities where his powers could help injured heroes and reformed villains alike. He'd even been officially designated a provisional hero with limited operating authority. It felt like progress, like maybe he'd found a way to exist in this universe without compromising who he was. He should have known it wouldn't last. The call came at 3 a.m., Cecil's face appearing on Stephen's communicator, with the kind of expression that meant everything was about to get worse. "We have a situation," Cecil said without preamble. "Omni-Man is engaging a threat downtown. He's requesting immediate backup. Specifically, he's requesting you." Stephen was already moving, throwing on his jacket and activating his gem's light for visibility. What kind of threat? Unclear. Initial reports suggest a being with reality-warping abilities. Omni-Man engaged 3 minutes ago. Communication was lost 30 seconds later. You need to move now. The urgency in Cecil's voice, genuine urgency, not his usual calculated tone, sent ice through Stephen's veins. Whatever could make Omni-Man request backup, and then lose contact within minutes was serious. Mark and Eve met Stephen en route, both looking as sleep-deprived and worried as he felt. They flew toward the coordinates Cecil had provided, cutting through the night sky with desperate speed. What they found downtown defied explanation. Reality itself was fracturing. Buildings existed in multiple states simultaneously, solid and liquid, present and absent, occupied and empty. The streets twisted into impossible geometry that hurt to perceive. And at the center of the distortion, two figures fought. Omni-Man, bleeding from dozens of wounds, his costume torn, his usually perfect hair matted with blood. And something else. It looked human. Male, middle-aged, wearing a business suit, but its presence felt wrong in ways that made Stephen's gem pulse with alarm. Reality bent around it, physics suggestions rather than laws, and its eyes held an emptiness that reminded Stephen of White Diamond at her absolute worst. "That's Conquest," Mark said, his voice tight with fear Stephen had never heard from him before. "Dad told me about him. He's Viltrumite, one of the strongest. And if Dad's losing—" "He's not Viltrumite," Stephen said, his empathic senses screaming warnings. "I don't know what he is, but he's not. His emotional signature is wrong, fragmented, like multiple beings occupying the same space." "Then what is he?" Eve demanded. The being, Conquest, or whatever it truly was, turned toward them. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. "Ah, the young heroes, how delightful! Tell me, do you know what I am?" "A dead man," Mark said, flying forward to support his father, but Conquest raised one hand, and Mark simply stopped, frozen in midair. Not held by visible force, but locked in place by reality, refusing to let him continue. "Wrong answer," Conquest said. "I am what happens when someone wishes too hard. When they want something so desperately that the universe bends to accommodate their desire. I am the Wishmaster, and your dear Omni-Man made a wish." Omni-Man pulled himself upright, spitting blood. "Stephen, don't listen to him. He's manipulating you. "I wished for strength," Conquest Wishmaster interrupted, gesturing at Omni-Man. "Wished for the power to protect my people, to save them from threats I couldn't fight." And the universe answered, gave me a warrior's body, a Viltrumite's power, everything I needed. But wishes have prices, always. And the price for this power was everyone I was trying to save. Images flooded Stephen's mind, not from his own empathy, but broadcast by the Wishmaster. Memories of a planet dying, of desperate people begging their leader for salvation. Of that leader, the man who would become Conquest, making a deal with something that existed between dimensions, trading the lives of his entire species for the power to protect them, becoming Viltrumite to fight Viltrumites, only to find his people gone, sacrificed, used as fuel for the transformation. "You killed your own people," Stephen whispered, horror crawling through him. "I traded them," the Wishmaster corrected, "for the power to kill those who would have killed them anyway. An efficiency exchange. But now I'm bored. The Viltrumites I wanted to fight have avoided me. So I've decided to play with your universe instead. To grant wishes and collect prices. To show beings what they truly want and what they're willing to sacrifice to get it." "What do you want with us?" Eve demanded, her powers flaring as she prepared to fight. "I want to grant you a wish," the Wishmaster said. "Each of you, one wish, anything your heart desires. The price will be revealed after acceptance, as per cosmic law. But the wish will be real, genuine, everything you've ever wanted." "That's insane," Mark said, still frozen but able to speak. "We're not making deals with reality-warping villains." "Not even to save your father," the Wishmaster gestured at Omni-Man, who collapsed to his knees. Stephen felt the Viltrumite's life force fading. Injuries that should heal were being prevented from healing by the Wishmaster's power. "Nolan Grayson is dying. The wish I granted him decades ago is being revoked. Payment comes due. He has minutes at most, unless one of you wishes to save him. Wishes hard enough that the universe bends. Which of you loves him most, I wonder?" Mark's face went white. "Dad, don't!" Omni-Man gasped. "Mark, don't make any deals with him. That's an order. Let me die before you—" "I wish for you to live," Mark said desperately. "I wish for my dad to be healed, to survive, to—" Reality rippled. Omni-Man's wounds closed. His breathing stabilized. Color returned to his face as Viltrumite healing reasserted itself. He stood, fully restored, staring at Mark with an expression mixing relief and absolute horror. "What have you done?" Omni-Man whispered. "I saved you," Mark said. "The price, whatever it is, I'll pay it. You're my dad. You're worth any price." The Wishmaster smiled. "How touching. The price, young Viltrumite, is simple. For your father's life, I claim yours. In exactly 1 hour, your heart will stop. Your body will fail, and nothing in this universe will be able to prevent it. The wish has been granted. The price will be paid." "No!" Eve screamed, her powers erupting outward. She transmuted the ground beneath the Wishmaster to lava, then acid, then pure energy. None of it touched him. Reality simply adjusted to make him immune. "You can't fight what grants wishes," the Wishmaster said. "But please continue trying. It's entertaining. And you still have your wish available, girl, as does the crystalline hybrid, Steven Universe. I'm particularly curious about what you might wish for, you who believes everyone deserves redemption. Everyone can be saved. Would you wish to go home, to save Mark, to stop me? What does the compassionate hero value most?" Steven's gem blazed pink, not from transformation, from pure crystalline focus. His empathic abilities reached out, touching the Wishmaster's fragmented consciousness, feeling past the theatrical villain exterior to the broken being underneath. What he found there shattered his heart. The Wishmaster wasn't evil, wasn't even malicious. He was in agony, cosmic agony. The wish he'd made had trapped him in a state of perpetual transformation. He was simultaneously alive and dead, human and Viltrumite, savior and destroyer. The universe had bent for him, and the bending never stopped. He granted wishes because that was all he could do. His consciousness had been rewritten to serve the cosmic mechanics of wish fulfillment. "You're suffering," Steven said quietly. "Every second, every breath. The power you wanted is torture. You grant wishes because the alternative is feeling your own existence. You're not a villain. You're a victim." The Wishmaster's smile faltered. "Don't. You want someone to wish for your freedom," Steven continued, understanding flooding through him. "That's why you're here, why you're offering wishes. You're hoping someone will accidentally phrase it right, will wish for your curse to end, for the price you paid to be refunded for—" "Stop!" The Wishmaster's voice cracked reality itself. Buildings shattered, the street fractured. Mark's frozen state collapsed as the Wishmaster's concentration broke. "You don't understand what you're talking about." "I understand exactly what I'm talking about," Steven said. His gem glowed brighter, healing light mixing with pink energy. "You're like the corrupted gems, like beings who've been broken and can't fix themselves, who need someone else to reach them, to heal them. You can't heal me, the Wishmaster shouted. I'm not injured, I'm transformed, changed at a level that exists between dimensions. Your powers work on biology and consciousness. I'm neither, I'm a living wish, a concept given form. You can't fix concepts. Then I wish for you to be freed, Stephen said. The words hung in the air. Reality itself seemed to pause, processing the statement, analyzing whether it qualified as a wish, whether the cosmic mechanics would accept it. No, the Wishmaster whispered. No, you fool. You don't understand the price. If you wish for my freedom, the cost is... Reality exploded with light. Stephen felt his gem crack, not physically but dimensionally. The wish was being processed, the price was being calculated, and what he felt approaching made even his pink state seem gentle by comparison. The price, the Wishmaster said, his voice carrying genuine sorrow now, is that you take my place, become the next Wishmaster, spend eternity granting wishes and collecting prices, while your consciousness fragments and your existence becomes torment. I tried to warn you, tried to make you angry enough that you'd wish something selfish, but you wished for me, for my freedom, for my salvation. Stephen felt the transformation beginning. His gem pulsed with energy that shouldn't exist in normal reality. His body started to shift, not into Pink Stephen, but into something else, something that existed between states, human and gem and concept and curse. No, Omni-Man flew at the Wishmaster, but the being was already fading, being released from cosmic bondage because someone had finally wished for it. Reverse the wish, take it back. Don't you dare leave him like this. I can't reverse what's been accepted, the Wishmaster said, his form becoming translucent. The cosmic law is absolute. A wish granted, a price paid. I'm sorry, Steven Universe. I truly am. You wanted to save everyone. Now you'll be able to. You'll grant every wish anyone makes near you, and you'll feel every price paid, every sacrifice, every consequence for eternity, or until someone wishes for your freedom the way you wished for mine. He vanished completely, and Steven Universe, the boy who'd believed everyone could be saved, became the thing that would save everyone while losing himself in the process. His gem shattered fully, then reformed, but wrong. The cracks filled with energy that wasn't light or dark or force. It was wish, pure wish. The crystalline structure that had once contained Rose Quartz's power now contained something far more terrible. Stephen felt his consciousness fragmenting, felt himself becoming less him and more function. The mechanics of cosmic wish fulfillment overwriting his personality like Sinclair's programming had overwritten his victims. "Stephen!" Eve flew to him, grabbing his shoulders. "Stay with us. Fight it. You're stronger than this curse. I wish you'd let me go," Stephen said. His voice carried harmonics that weren't his own. "I wish you'd step back. I wish..." He clamped his mouth shut, horrified. The words had come automatically, his consciousness reacting to Eve's desire for him to be okay by trying to grant a twisted version of it. The curse was already rewriting his thought processes. "We have to get him contained," Omni-Man said, his strategic mind overriding emotional response. "Before someone makes a casual wish near him, before 'I wish I was dead' or 'I wish they'd suffer' becomes literal. Stephen, can you fly?" Stephen tried. His body lifted off the ground, but not through gem power or pink energy. Through reality adjustment, the universe bending because his presence now carried weight that physics had to accommodate. "I'm not flying," Stephen said, his voice fragmenting between his own and something cosmic. I'm being where wishes need me to be. This is wrong. This is so wrong. You have to— Don't say it, Mark interrupted desperately. Don't wish for anything. Don't even think wishes. Just hold on. We'll figure this out. We'll find someone who can reverse this. There is no reversal, Stephen said. Knowledge flooding through him. Terrible knowledge. The curse passes through wish fulfillment. The only way to free me is for someone to wish for it. And the price for that wish is they become the next wishmaster. The cycle continues forever. Trading places, trading torment. I can't be saved without damning someone else. Reality shattered around those words. Buildings they'd been fighting around collapsed as the cosmic mechanics adjusted to acknowledge the truth Stephen had spoken. This wasn't a curse that could be broken, only transferred. Then we contain it, Cecil's voice crackled through their communicators. We've been monitoring. GDA has protocols for reality warping threats. Stephen, we're going to need you to come to a secure facility immediately, before this gets worse. Before I grant wishes that destroy the universe, Stephen translated, his consciousness flickering between human empathy and cosmic function. Before someone wishes, I want everyone dead, and I'm compelled to fulfill it. Before I become the most dangerous being in your reality. He looked at his friends, Mark terrified for him, Eve crying, Omni-Man calculating how to minimize damage. And Stephen felt his humanity slipping, felt the curse overriding who he'd been, felt himself becoming function rather than person. I'm sorry, Stephen said, his voice mostly cosmic now. I tried to save him. I thought if I could just heal one more person, redeem one more being, prove that compassion could work here. You proved it, Eve said through tears. You proved it so completely that you sacrificed yourself. That's not failure, Stephen. That's martyrdom, Omni-Man interrupted brutally. That's getting killed by your own compassion. That's exactly what I warned would happen. Stephen, you traded your existence for a villain's freedom. How is that redemption? How is that saving anyone? He wasn't a villain, Stephen said. He was a victim, and I— The words stopped. Stephen's consciousness fragmented completely for 3 seconds. When he came back, he was being transported by Omni-Man toward a GDA facility, Mark and Eve flying alongside, and his gem was pulsing with energy that made reality scream. What happened? Stephen asked, his voice small and human and terrified. Why can't I remember the last few minutes? You started granting ambient wishes, Omni-Man said grimly. Someone in the evacuation crowd said, I wish this nightmare would end. You almost ended it, permanently, for everyone in a 6-block radius. Eve had to use her powers to contain the reality distortion. You've been unconscious since then, processing, transforming, becoming more Wishmaster and less Stephen. How long until I'm completely gone? Unknown, Omni-Man said. But every passing minute makes you less you. The GDA facility has reality anchors, dimensional stabilizers, technology designed to contain beings like you. It won't stop the transformation, but it'll slow it, give us time to find a solution. There is no solution, Stephen said. The curse is absolute. I felt it, understood it. The only way out is— Don't say it, Mark begged. Please, there has to be another way. But they both knew there wasn't. Stephen had made a wish with cosmic consequences. The price was absolute, and the boy who'd believed everyone could be saved had just learned the hardest lesson this universe could teach. Some acts of compassion don't redeem. They destroy. and Steven Universe, the hero who'd never wanted to hurt anyone, was about to become the being that hurt everyone simply by existing. The GDA containment facility was built into a mountain, 3 miles of reinforced concrete, energy barriers, and dimensional anchors designed to hold reality-warping threats. Steven floated in the center of a spherical chamber, suspended by forces that existed between physics and metaphysics, surrounded by technology that hurt to perceive with his fragmenting consciousness. He'd been here for 3 days, or 3 hours, or 3 years. Time was becoming suggestion rather than law. "Steven, can you hear me?" Eve's voice came through speakers embedded in the chamber walls. She stood in an observation room behind 6 feet of transparent aluminum, her face pressed close to the glass. "They're saying your consciousness integration is at 43%, that you're barely Steven anymore, but I don't believe them." "I know you're still in there." Steven tried to respond. His mouth opened. Words came out in his voice, but with harmonics that belonged to something cosmic. "I wish you would leave. I wish you would forget me. I wish—" He forced his jaw shut, teeth grinding so hard his hybrid durability was the only thing preventing fractures. The curse was using his empathic abilities against him. Eve wanted him to be okay. The curse twisted that want into wishes he'd be compelled to grant, removing himself from her memory to spare her the pain of watching him disappear. "I'm not leaving," Eve said firmly. "I don't care what you say. I don't care what the curse makes you say. You stayed with your corrupted gems until you healed them. I'm staying with you until we figure this out." Through the fragmenting chaos of his consciousness, Steven felt gratitude and despair mixing. Eve's loyalty was beautiful. It was also leverage the curse would use. Every person who cared about him became a vulnerability, wishes waiting to be spoken, prices waiting to be paid. In another observation room, Cecil Stedman stood with Omni-Man and a team of scientists, reviewing data that made no sense according to any known physics. "His cellular structure is becoming quantum," one scientist reported. "He exists in multiple states simultaneously, human, gem, and something else. Something that shouldn't be possible in standard space-time. Every second, he becomes less anchored to our reality." "How long until he's completely transformed?" Cecil asked. "At current rate, 18 hours. After that, containment becomes theoretical. He'll be able to grant wishes regardless of dimensional barriers. The entire facility becomes a liability. The entire planet becomes vulnerable." "Then we have 18 hours to find a solution," Omni-Man said. His voice was steady, but Steven's empathic abilities, still functional despite everything, felt the Viltrumites' genuine distress. Omni-Man had spent weeks arguing that Steven's compassion would get him killed. Being proven right brought no satisfaction, only regret. "There is one option," Cecil said carefully. "It's extreme, possibly unethical, but it's an option." "Explain," Omni-Man demanded. "We find someone to make the wish, someone to trade places with Steven, take on the Wishmaster curse in his place." The silence that followed was profound. "You're suggesting we sacrifice someone else," Omni-Man said flatly. "Damn another person to cosmic torment to save Steven." "I'm suggesting we give someone the choice," Cecil corrected. "A volunteer, someone terminal perhaps, someone who'd trade their remaining months of suffering for whatever existence the Wishmaster has. It's not ideal, but it's an option." "It's an abomination," Omni-Man said, "and Steven would never accept it. The moment he understood what we'd done, he'd wish himself back into the curse. We'd have damned 2 people instead of 1. Then what do you suggest? I suggest we tell Stephen the truth, Omni-Man said, that there's no solution, that the only mercy we can offer is ending it before he transforms completely, before his existence becomes torture, a quick death while he's still mostly himself. You want to kill him? Mark's voice came from the doorway. The young Viltrumite looked like he'd aged years in 3 days. That's your solution? Murder? It's mercy, Omni-Man corrected. Mark, I've lived centuries. I've seen fates worse than death. This curse, what Stephen's becoming, that's worse than death. An eternity of granting wishes and collecting prices, while your consciousness fragments into cosmic function. That's not life. That's damnation. There has to be another way, Mark shouted. We can't just give up on him. We're not giving up, Cecil interjected. We're considering all options, including the ones we don't like. 18 hours, gentlemen. If anyone has a better idea, now's the time. In the containment chamber, Stephen heard everything through paper-thin walls between dimensions. His consciousness was fragmenting, yes, but pieces of him remained. Pieces that understood what was being discussed. They were going to kill him, or damn someone else to save him. Both options were intolerable. Stephen forced his mind to focus, pushed past the cosmic noise filling his thoughts, reached for the empathic abilities that had always been his greatest strength. If he was becoming a being that granted wishes, that meant he was connecting to desire at a fundamental level, reading wants and needs and translating them into reality. That was just empathy weaponized. Empathy made cosmic. What if he could use that connection in reverse? Not to grant wishes, but to understand them so completely he could. The thought fragmented. Stephen's consciousness split into 17 different processing threads. 6 of them weren't him anymore. They were pure Wishmaster function, cataloging ambient desires from people throughout the facility. 3 more were fragmenting into quantum uncertainty. That left 8 threads still recognizably Stephen. Not enough. Not nearly enough to maintain identity, but maybe enough to try something desperate. Stephen reached out with his fragmenting consciousness, touched every mind in the facility simultaneously, not to read wishes but to broadcast understanding, to make everyone feel what he felt, experience what he experienced, the agony of existence between states, the horror of consciousness fragmenting, the desperate, screaming need to remain himself, while cosmic mechanics overwrote his personality line by line. In the observation rooms, every person gasped as Stephen's experience flooded through them. Cecil clutched his desk. Omni-Man staggered despite Viltrumite physiology. Eve collapsed to her knees, tears streaming as she felt Stephen's torment firsthand. This is what I'm becoming, Stephen's voice echoed through every mind. This is what the Wishmaster lived with for centuries before I freed him. This is why he granted wishes, because the alternative was feeling this. And this is why there's no solution that doesn't involve damning someone else or killing me before the transformation completes. Stephen, stop, Mark called out. You're making it worse. I'm making you understand, Stephen interrupted, his voice fragmenting across dimensional layers. Understand that I can't accept mercy killing, can't accept sacrificing someone else, can't accept any solution that compromises the beliefs I've held my entire life, even now, even becoming this. I won't abandon who I am. Then what do you want? Omni-Man demanded, genuine anguish breaking through his usual control. Stephen, what solution exists that preserves your principles and saves you? None, Stephen admitted. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There's no happy ending here. No clever empathic solution. No healing that fixes this. I made a wish with cosmic consequences. The price is absolute. And the only question left is whether I remain myself long enough to say goodbye. The empathic broadcast cut off. Stephen's consciousness collapsed back into himself. Or what remained of himself. The facility staff recovered slowly, processing the horror they'd experienced secondhand, understanding now why Stephen couldn't accept any of their proposed solutions. In the containment chamber, Stephen's form flickered, human, crystalline, cosmic, his very existence becoming uncertain. 12 hours until full transformation, the lead scientist reported, her voice shaking. The empathic broadcast accelerated the process. He's becoming unstable. We need to decide now. We're not deciding anything, Eve said, pulling herself up. This is Stephen's choice, his existence, his curse. We don't get to mercy kill him or sacrifice someone else without his consent. That's not how this works. Then we're just going to watch him disappear? Mark asked desperately. Watch our friend become a cosmic horror that grants wishes until someone eventually wishes for his freedom and the cycle continues. That's the solution. That's reality, Omni-Man said quietly. Sometimes there are no good options, no clever fixes, just terrible choices and the will to face them. Stephen understands that now, better than any of us. They stood in silence, watching through observation windows as Steven Universe fought to maintain his identity against cosmic transformation, watching as pieces of him disappeared into Wishmaster function, watching as the boy who'd believed everyone could be saved learned that some curses couldn't be broken, only endured. At the 8-hour mark, Stephen managed to regain enough coherence to speak clearly. His voice carried through the facility's speaker system, addressing everyone who'd been working to save him. I want to say thank you, he said, for trying, for caring, for not giving up even when there was no solution. You've all been better friends than I deserved. You deserved everything, Eve said, her voice breaking. You deserved a universe that rewarded compassion instead of punishing it. You deserved to go home. You deserved... I got what I chose, Stephen interrupted gently. I saw someone suffering, someone who needed help, and I chose to help them even knowing there'd be a price. That's not the universe's fault. That's me being who I am, making the choice I'd always make. The stupid choice, Mark said, the self-sacrificing, martyr complex, saving everyone else choice that got you killed. The right choice, Stephen corrected. Mark, I freed someone from centuries of torment, gave them peace they'd never thought possible. That matters, even if the price is becoming what they were, even if I lose myself. Compassion that only works when it's convenient isn't real compassion. It's just self-interest with good PR. That's insane, Mark protested. Stephen, you can't actually believe... I believe exactly that, Stephen said. And I need you to believe it too, because otherwise my transformation doesn't mean anything. It's just tragedy. But if you understand that I chose this, that I'd choose it again even knowing the cost, then maybe it's something else. Something that proves compassion isn't weakness, even in a universe that treats it that way. In the observation room, Omni-Man's jaw worked silently. He'd spent weeks trying to convince Stephen that compassion would get him killed, had been proven right, but hearing Stephen accept that reality while refusing to compromise his beliefs. I was wrong about you, Omni-Man said finally. "Steven Universe, I thought you were naive, thought your philosophy was childish idealism that would break the first time reality tested it. But you're not naive. You understand exactly what your beliefs cost. You're paying that cost anyway. That's not weakness. That's actually strength, the kind I don't possess." "You'll figure it out eventually," Steven said. His consciousness was fragmenting faster now, words becoming difficult. Just watch Mark. Keep him from making my mistakes. Make sure he survives this universe better than I did." "I will," Omni-Man promised. "I swear it." At the 4-hour mark, Steven's human features were barely visible beneath cosmic energy. His gem, the source of all his powers, had transformed completely, no longer rose quartz, now something that existed between colors, between states, between concepts. Eve pressed her hand against the observation glass, wishing desperately that she could reach him, touch him one more time. The wish resonated. Steven's eyes, still mostly his own, focused on her. "Eve, please don't wish anything. I'm barely holding on. If you wish, I'll have to grant it, and I don't know what price the curse will demand from you." "I don't care about the price," Eve said. "If wishing could save you—" "It can't." Steven's voice cracked across dimensions. "The only wish that frees me damns someone else. There's no clever wording, no loophole. The cosmic mechanics are absolute. Please, Eve, please don't wish. Let me disappear knowing I didn't damn any of you with me." Eve withdrew her hand slowly, nodded through tears. Okay, I won't wish. But Steven, I'll remember you. Really you. Not the martyr, not the lesson, just you. The person who cared so much that it killed him. "That's all I want," Steven said. "To be remembered as someone who cared, even when caring was stupid, even when it got me killed, even when—" His voice cut off. Consciousness fragmenting beyond recovery, the last coherent threads of Steven Universe dissolving into cosmic function. At the 2-hour mark, the being in the containment chamber stopped being recognizably Steven. It was pure Wishmaster now, function without personality, cosmic mechanic without human anchor. The scientists declared transformation complete. Cecil ordered containment protocols intensified, and Mark and Eve stood at the observation glass, watching the space where their friend had been, knowing he was gone but not quite able to process it. "This universe killed him," Mark said numbly. "It took someone good and kind and broke him. Turned his greatest strength into the thing that destroyed him." "No," Omni-Man said from behind them. "Steven killed himself, chose to die rather than compromise his beliefs. That wasn't the universe's fault. That was his choice. And as much as I disagree with it, as much as I think it was wasteful and tragic and completely unnecessary, I have to respect that it was his choice to make." "What happens now?" Eve asked. "What do we do with what he became?" "We contain it," Cecil said. "Keep it locked in this facility. Make sure no one gets close enough to make casual wishes. And we hope, we pray, that someday someone figures out how to break this curse without sacrificing another life." "And if they don't?" Mark asked. "Then Steven Universe's sacrifice was permanent," Cecil said. "He saved one being from eternal torment by accepting that torment himself. Depending on your perspective, that's either the greatest act of heroism possible or the most pointless death imaginable." "It's both," Omni-Man said quietly, "and that's what makes it tragic." They stood in silence, mourning their friend, their ally, the boy who'd believed everyone could be saved and proved himself right by becoming unsavable. In the containment chamber, The Wishmaster hovered, waiting, processing ambient desires from billions of minds across the planet, cataloging wishes it would grant if anyone spoke them close enough to its influence. Somewhere in the cosmic function, buried beneath Wishmaster mechanics, a fragment of Steven Universe remained, too small to be coherent, too scattered to be recognizable, just enough to feel. To feel everyone's grief, to feel the weight of his sacrifice, to feel the terrible certainty that he'd done the right thing, even if it killed him. 3 months after Steven's transformation, Mark Grayson stood on the roof of the building where Steven had first told him about the diamonds, about redemption, about believing people could be better. The city sprawled below, lights flickering in the evening dark, life continuing despite Steven's absence, the universe moving forward like it always did, indifferent to individual sacrifice. "I knew I'd find you here," Eve's voice said from behind him. She landed softly on the rooftop, her powers no longer needing visible effort. 3 months of constant hero work, filling the gap Steven had left, had honed her abilities to unconscious precision. "This is where he tried to explain his philosophy," Mark said without turning, "where he told me about seeing the good in everyone, about giving people chances. I told him it was naive, that this universe would punish that kind of thinking." "You were right," Eve said quietly, "but that doesn't make his way wrong, doesn't it?" Mark turned to face her. "Steven's gone because he believed someone could be saved, because he made a wish to free a cosmic horror instead of letting it suffer. His compassion literally killed him. How is that not proof that his philosophy was incompatible with reality?" "Because he saved someone," Eve said. "The Wishmaster, the original one, is free now, living somewhere beyond this universe, no longer suffering. Steven accomplished exactly what he wanted to accomplish. The price was just higher than any of us wanted to pay." Mark was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I've been visiting the facility, the containment chamber, just sitting there, hoping some fragment of Steven can still hear me, still know that he mattered." "Does it help?" "No, but I keep doing it anyway." Mark looked at his hands, hands that could punch through mountains, that had killed villains without hesitation, that had learned to use violence efficiently. "Steven would have hated what I'm becoming." "What are you becoming?" "Pragmatic, cold, my dad's son." Mark's voice carried bitter acceptance. "I used to hesitate, used to try talking first, used to give villains chances. But every time I do that now, I think about Steven, about how his chances and mercy and redemption philosophy got him transformed into a cosmic horror. And I think, maybe Dad was right. Maybe this universe does require strength over compassion." "Steven wouldn't want you to become cynical because of him," Eve said. "Steven's not here to want anything anymore," Mark shot back. "He's a cosmic function trapped in a containment chamber. Whatever wants or desires exist in there, they're not his. They're the curse wearing his face." Eve felt tears threatening but forced them back. She'd cried enough over the past 3 months. Now she needed to be strong, to carry forward what Steven had tried to teach them. "I've been thinking about what Steven said," Eve began, "about his choice. He knew the price, knew he'd lose himself. But he made the wish anyway because someone was suffering and he could help. That's not naivete. That's courage we don't have." "Or stupidity we're smart enough to avoid," Mark countered. "Maybe both," Eve admitted. "But Mark, if we let Steven's sacrifice turn us into versions of your father, into heroes who only use force, who never give chances, who treat compassion as weakness. Then Stephen died for nothing. We become exactly what he was trying to prove we didn't have to be. And if we maintain his philosophy and get ourselves killed the same way, then we die believing something mattered more than survival. Eve moved to stand beside Mark at the roof's edge. Stephen understood something we're still learning, that the point isn't whether you survive. It's whether you remain yourself while surviving, whether you compromise your principles or hold them even when they're costly. His principles cost him his existence. And ours are costing us our humanity, Eve said. Look at us, Mark. 3 months ago, we were heroes who saved people. Now we're heroes who kill threats efficiently. We've stopped trying to reach villains, stopped offering chances, stopped believing people can be better. Stephen's curse transformed him, but what's transforming us is worse. We're choosing to become something he'd mourn. Mark wanted to argue, wanted to defend the pragmatism he had adopted, but Eve was right. He could feel it. Every villain he'd killed without attempting communication, every threat he'd eliminated before trying to understand, every moment he'd chosen efficiency over empathy, he was becoming his father, strong, effective, and utterly devoid of what had made Stephen special. What do you want me to do? Mark asked. Pretend Stephen's philosophy works? Keep believing people can be saved when we literally watched compassion destroy someone? I want you to remember that Stephen saved the original Wishmaster, Eve said. That being is free now, living, no longer suffering centuries of torment. Stephen accomplished what he set out to do. The cost was terrible, but the result was real. Someone was saved. That matters. Does it matter enough? That's what we have to decide, Eve said. Whether saving one person is worth losing yourself. Whether compassion that comes with a price is still worth pursuing. Whether Stephen's sacrifice was meaningful or just tragic. They stood in silence, each processing their grief and confusion differently. Below them, the city continued its endless motion, life persisting despite tragedy, the universe indifferent. There's something you should know, Eve said finally, about the containment facility, about Stephen. Mark turned to face her fully. What? The scientists have been monitoring his consciousness integration. The Wishmaster function is at 97%. But the remaining 3%, they're not random fragments. They're concentrated, organized, like Stephen's fighting to maintain some core of himself, despite the transformation. Are you saying there's still hope that he might? No, Eve cut him off. I'm saying Stephen's still suffering, that 3% is enough to be aware but not enough to be coherent. He's trapped in there, Mark, knowing what he's become but unable to change it, unable to communicate, unable to do anything except feel the cosmic mechanics overriding him. Mark felt something break inside his chest. Then we have to end it. We have to... We can't, Eve said. The containment can't be breached. Any attempt to kill the Wishmaster while it's in that state would release dimensional energy that could devastate the planet. We're not keeping Stephen contained for his benefit. We're doing it because letting him out would be catastrophic. So he's imprisoned forever. Until someone makes the wish that frees him and takes his place, Eve confirmed. That's the only way the curse ends, through transfer, through sacrifice, through someone choosing to become what Stephen became. Mark looked at her sharply. Don't. I wasn't suggesting anything, Eve said. Just stating facts. The curse can be transferred. Someone could free Stephen. They'd just become the next Wishmaster in his place. No one's doing that, Mark said firmly. Stephen would never forgive us if we damned ourselves to save him. You know that. I know, Eve agreed. But that doesn't stop me from wishing there was another way. From hoping that maybe… She stopped, realizing what she'd said. Wishing. Hoping. Words that carried weight around beings like the Wishmaster. Words that could become literal if spoken in the wrong place. We should go, Mark said. Before we say something we can't take back. They flew back toward the city, leaving the rooftop behind. But the conversation lingered. The knowledge that Stephen remained partially aware, partially suffering, trapped in cosmic function while they debated his philosophy and mourned his loss. At GDA headquarters, Cecil Stedman reviewed the latest data from the containment facility. The Wishmaster remained stable. No dimensional breaches, no reality distortions beyond the expected baseline. The threat was contained. But the 3% remained, that stubborn fragment of Steven Universe refusing to be fully overwritten. Fighting cosmic mechanics with nothing but will and determination. It's been 3 months, one scientist said. By all calculations, he should be fully transformed by now. The curse should have completely overridden his consciousness. But he's holding on to something. Some core identity that won't let go. Can we communicate with that fragment? Cecil asked. We've tried. Every form of transmission we have. No response. If Stephen's still in there, he can't reach out, can't speak, can't do anything except persist against erasure. Then we document it, Cecil said. For the record, for history, so that when, if, this curse is ever broken, people will know. Steven Universe didn't surrender, didn't accept transformation peacefully. He fought every second, remained himself as long as physically possible. That's worth recording. The scientists agreed, and the documentation continued. The official record of a hero who'd sacrificed himself to save someone, who'd believed so completely in redemption that it had destroyed him, who'd remained true to his principles, even as those principles killed him. Weeks passed, then months. The city adapted to Stephen's absence. New heroes rose to fill the gap. Old heroes adjusted their methods. And slowly, the memory of Steven Universe began to fade. Not forgotten, but no longer immediate. No longer the fresh wound that made every mission ache. Mark and Eve continued their work, saving people, fighting villains, trying to find balance between Stephen's philosophy and the universe's brutality. Some days they succeeded, some days they failed, but they kept trying, because giving up felt like betraying Stephen's memory. Omni-Man watched his son struggle with the lessons Stephen had taught, watched Mark oscillate between compassion and pragmatism, never quite comfortable with either extreme, and Nolan realized something he'd never expected. Steven Universe had succeeded, not in surviving, not in maintaining his philosophy intact, but in planting seeds, in showing beings like Mark and Eve that another way existed, even if that way was costly, even if it didn't always work, even if it sometimes destroyed those who pursued it. The philosophy lived on, imperfect, modified, adapted to a harsher universe, but present, real, affecting how heroes approached their work. 6 months after Stephen's transformation, a young hero named Oliver, a human Thraxan hybrid with abilities similar to Viltrumites, approached Mark with a question. I heard stories about Steven Universe, Oliver said. The hero who believed everyone could be saved, who tried to redeem villains instead of killing them. Is that true? Yeah, Mark said, it's true. What happened to him? Mark was quiet for a long moment. Then, he saved someone. A cosmic horror suffering for centuries. Stephen made a wish that freed them. The price was becoming what they'd been, taking on their curse, losing himself to save someone else. "That's incredible," Oliver said, his eyes wide. "He must have been the bravest hero ever." "Or the stupidest," Mark said, but the words carried no heat, just tired acknowledgement. "Oliver, the universe doesn't reward compassion the way Stephen's did. Here, mercy can get you killed. Kindness can be exploited. Believing people can be better sometimes means watching them prove you wrong in the worst possible ways." "But sometimes it works," Oliver pressed. "Sometimes people actually can be better?" "Sometimes," Mark admitted. "Stephen proved that. Saved people nobody else would try to save. Changed beings everyone else had written off. Right up until his compassion destroyed him. So should I be like him or not?" Mark looked at the young hero. So earnest, so hopeful, so much like Stephen had been. "I don't know. I honestly don't know. Stephen's way got him killed, but becoming the opposite of Stephen, becoming purely pragmatic, purely survival-focused, that feels like dying in a different way. Like losing the part of yourself that makes being a hero meaningful." "Then maybe the answer is balance," Oliver suggested. "Being compassionate when possible, being strong when necessary, trying Stephen's way first but accepting when it won't work." "Maybe," Mark said, "but finding that balance, knowing when to push for redemption and when to accept some threats can't be talked down, that's the hardest part. Stephen never found it, and I'm not sure I have either." "But you're trying," Oliver said. "That matters, doesn't it?" Mark was quiet. Then, "Yeah, I guess it does." In the containment facility deep beneath a mountain, the Wishmaster hovered in its spherical chamber, cosmic function operating continuously, granting wishes spoke too close to its influence, collecting prices according to rules it couldn't change. And buried within that function, fighting erasure every second, the fragment that remained Stephen Universe persisted, not conscious enough to think, not coherent enough to feel distinctly, just present, aware, refusing to surrender completely to transformation, because somewhere in that fragment existed Stephen's core belief. Everyone deserves a chance. Everyone can be better. Everyone is worth saving, even if saving them costs everything, even if the price is transformation, imprisonment, erasure, even if no one ever knows you're still fighting. The fragment couldn't communicate, couldn't reach out, couldn't do anything except exist and resist and refuse to let cosmic mechanics claim the last pieces of identity. It was the smallest, most meaningless act of defiance imaginable. It was also the most powerful thing Stephen Universe had ever done, because it proved, to no audience, with no witness, in silence that would never be broken, that compassion wasn't a philosophy that could be killed through consequence. It was a choice that persisted despite consequence, a decision that remained valid even when it destroyed you. The universe could transform Stephen's body, could overwrite his consciousness, could turn his greatest strength into cosmic function, but it couldn't make that fragment stop caring, stop believing, stop being the person who'd chosen to save someone, even knowing the cost. That was beyond the universe's power. That was beyond anyone's power. 3% of Stephen Universe, fighting cosmic mechanics, refusing erasure, remaining himself in the only way still possible. Not enough to be saved, but enough to prove his philosophy survived even his death. And in a universe built on violence and pragmatism and survival at any cost, A universe that had tried so hard to break Steven's beliefs through consequence and brutality. That stubborn 3% was the most radical act of rebellion possible. Compassion that wouldn't die, hope that wouldn't surrender, humanity that wouldn't transform. Steven Universe had lost his existence, his consciousness, his ability to act. But he'd won something more important, proof that some things mattered more than survival, that remaining true to yourself, even when it killed you, was its own form of victory, that the universe could destroy you but couldn't make you wrong. Mark and Eve would never know about the 3%, would never understand that Steven still fought, would spend years debating whether his sacrifice had meaning, but Steven knew, in whatever awareness remained to him, buried beneath cosmic function, he knew he'd made the right choice. He'd saved someone who needed saving. He'd remained himself until biology, physics, and cosmic mechanics made that impossible. And that, more than survival, more than victory, more than anything else, was worth the price. 2 years after Steven Universe's transformation into the Wishmaster, Mark Grayson stood before the containment chamber for what he'd promised himself would be the last time. The being inside, barely recognizable as anything that had once been human or gem, hovered in perfect stillness. Cosmic energy crackled across its form. Reality bent around it like fabric under impossible weight. This was the Wishmaster, function, curse, cosmic mechanism. But Mark had learned to look deeper, to use the empathic awareness Steven had taught him to cultivate. And when he looked with that perception, he saw it, the fragment, 3%, still fighting, still refusing to surrender. "I understand now," Mark said quietly, knowing Steven couldn't hear but needing to say it anyway. "What you were trying to teach me, it wasn't about whether compassion works. It was about whether you remain yourself while pursuing it, whether you compromise your principles when they become costly." He pressed his hand against the observation glass. "I've been trying to find balance between your way and my dad's way, between compassion and pragmatism. Some days I succeed, some days I fail, but I keep trying, because giving up on what you believed in feels like letting you die twice." The Wishmaster didn't respond, couldn't respond, but Mark felt something, maybe imagination, maybe that 3% somehow acknowledging his presence, a warmth that had no physical source. "Eve's doing better than me," Mark continued. "She's found ways to be kind without being naive, strong without being cruel. She's becoming the hero you always believed we could be. And Oliver, the young hero I told you about, he's following your example, trying to reach villains, offering chances, actually succeeding sometimes." Mark swallowed hard. "Your philosophy didn't die with you, Steven. It adapted, evolved, found ways to exist in this universe without destroying everyone who practiced it. That's your real legacy, not sacrifice, not martyrdom, but showing us that another way was possible, that we could choose compassion even in a universe built on violence." He stepped back from the glass. "I'm going to stop visiting now, not because I'm forgetting you, but because I need to live forward instead of mourning backward. You'd understand that. You'd probably encourage it, so thank you. For everything you taught me, everything you showed me, everything you proved was possible." Mark turned to leave, then paused. "And Steven, that 3%, keep fighting, keep being yourself, because someday, somehow, we're going to figure out how to break this curse without damning someone else. I don't know how, I don't know when, but we won't stop trying. That's a promise." He flew from the facility, leaving Steven Universe alone in his prison. But not forgotten. Never forgotten. The fragment continued its futile resistance, not because success was possible, but because surrender was unthinkable, because even cosmic mechanics couldn't force that last piece of Steven Universe to accept that he'd stopped being himself. In the 2 years since Steven's transformation, the Invincible universe had changed in subtle but profound ways. Heroes approached villains differently, gave chances where none had been given before, tried communication before violence. Sometimes it worked, often it didn't, but the attempt itself, the choice to try, that came from Steven. Battle Beast returned to Earth once, hunting for Steven. When he learned what had happened, when he understood that the healer who'd fought him had sacrificed himself to save someone, the warrior's expression had shifted to something approaching respect. "He was what I claimed he couldn't be," Battle Beast said, "a warrior who never abandoned compassion, who remained himself even when transformation demanded otherwise. I was wrong about him. He was stronger than I understood." Omni-Man never said it aloud, but his approach to Mark's training changed after Steven. Less emphasis on pure strength, more discussion of principles and choices, recognition that power without purpose was just destruction waiting to happen. Even Cecil Stedman, pragmatic, calculating, willing to make terrible choices for perceived greater good, had been affected, not transformed, not redeemed, but influenced. He approved fewer sacrificial missions, questioned more terminal solutions, asked, "What would the universe kid have tried?" before authorizing lethal force. Steven's sacrifice had planted seeds throughout the Invincible universe, not changing it fundamentally, not making it into the peaceful reality Steven had come from, but making it slightly kinder, slightly more willing to try redemption before resorting to elimination. Was it worth the cost? Worth Steven's existence, his transformation, his eternal imprisonment in cosmic function? Mark didn't know. Eve didn't know. No one knew, but they carried forward anyway. Trying to honor Steven's memory by being heroes he would have recognized, by choosing compassion when possible, by remaining themselves even when the universe demanded they become something colder. And in the containment chamber, buried beneath cosmic mechanics and dimensional function, the fragment persisted. Steven Universe had believed everyone deserved redemption. Everyone could be better. Everyone was worth saving. He'd been destroyed by that belief, but he'd also proven it true. The Wishmaster he'd freed was living peacefully somewhere beyond dimensional barriers, one being saved from centuries of suffering, one life reclaimed from cosmic torment, one victory that had cost Steven everything but validated his entire philosophy. The universe had tried to teach Steven that compassion was weakness, that mercy was naivete, that remaining true to yourself in the face of brutal reality was suicide. Steven had learned those lessons, understood them completely, and chosen his philosophy anyway, not because he was naive, but because he was brave, because he'd decided that remaining Steven Universe, compassionate, hopeful, believing in redemption, mattered more than survival. That was his real strength, not his shields, not his healing, not even his empathic abilities. His real strength was the choice to be himself, regardless of consequence. The universe could transform him, imprison him, reduce him to 3% consciousness-fighting erasure. But it couldn't make him wrong. It couldn't make his choice invalid. It couldn't prove that compassion was weakness, when the evidence, one freed cosmic horror, dozens of influenced heroes, An entire universe slightly changed, demonstrated the opposite. Steven Universe had entered the Invincible universe, believing everyone could be saved. He'd died, or worse than died, proving himself right. And that victory, invisible and unprovable and meaningless to everyone except Steven himself, was absolute. In the containment chamber, reality bent around cosmic function. The Wishmaster operated according to rules it couldn't change. And buried within it, 3% of a boy who'd refused to compromise his principles continued its silent rebellion, not hoping for rescue, not waiting for salvation, just being. Being Steven Universe, being compassionate, being himself, forever.